Welcome everyone to the Facilities Committee meeting on this November 20th, 2025. Mr. Hollis, can you do roll call to establish quorum?
Yes, Chair Batchelor. On the roll call for the Facilities Committee regular meeting for November 20th, 2025. Director Barry is absent. Director Thompson?
Present.
Chair Batchelor?
Here.
Quorum present.
Thank you. So I just want to clarify to folks that we have to have, if you would like to speak on an agenda item tonight, there are comment cards on the side. We do ask that students go first in any comment section. So please let us know if you're a student on the comment cards. That could be easily done. And then we have a couple of different items tonight where we can have public comment. So each of the items, so there are public comment on D1, F1, F2, F3, F4, G1, and G2, as well as public comment on non-agenda items, which is H1. So those items need to be listed at the top of your comment card. And those comment cards need to be in before we get to the item. So I would like to also make a modification to the agenda since we do have our students here tonight who are speaking on, I believe, a new business item. So I'd like to move G, the entire G section, above or before F, which is unfinished business. Are there any other modifications? Okay. Seeing none, let's go ahead and go to the adoption of the committee meeting minutes. Is there a motion?
Yeah, I move the adoption of the committee minutes for August 21.
Thank you. I will second. Mr. Hollis, can you take roll on this item?
Yes, for the record, there are no public commenters to speak on this item. And I'll proceed with the vote. On the motion to approve the October 16th, 2025 Facilities Committee meeting minutes, Director Barry?
Yes.
Director Thompson?
Yes.
Chair Batchelor?
Yes.
Minutes are approved.
Right, wonderful. So we are here at the adoption of the general consent report. There is nothing on the general consent report. And I believe there are still some other students that we are waiting for. So if folks do not mind, if we could do G2 before G1. So that's the authorizing the demolition of unsafe Blythe structure at 1025 2nd Avenue and preserving the future development options while reducing impact on the General Fund Facilities Committee. Is there a presentation or anything on this item?
Is this the first, is this Director Barry's item? No presentation, it's a resolution. Happy to talk through.
That's right. Go ahead, Director Barry.
So this is a resolution to initiate demolition at the 1025 property. If folks recall, there was a move to initiate emergency demolition at a few sites. And this particular site was initially considered for that body of work, but because of a bunch of or several other considerations and processes that we had to navigate, could not be included in that work. It's still, for some of the reasons that the other properties were considered for emergency resolution, still a source of conflict for the community and does present danger and threat to students and community, and so we do want to move forward. I think the other benefit to the school district is it continues to advance us through a process that allows us to make use of an unutilized property in the future for whatever reason that the school board will decide at a later date. So this advances that work. I think that's it for me.
I think in terms of moving, whether you're going to move to adopt. And
Oh,
then
you're
a
right. Is
discussion
there a
about-
motion on this item?
I motion to adopt.
Is there a second?
I second.
Great. Yes, so now we can have a debate, or questions. There is a total here of $7 million from Measure Y bond allocation. That is, correct if I'm wrong, from the original 11 million that we have allocated for demolition.
That is correct. It was in the emergency resolution, the board moved funding into demolition to be able to move forward and address the three properties. That was Hillside, Ralph Bunch, and also it stabilized the initial 1025 and removed the encampment. At this point, we're believing it's going to be about $7 million of that money would be for the full demolition of the building.
And there was also a concern or a question about the historic nature of the building and or any other kind of city permits or city inspections that we needed to have. Do we have any of those kind of answers, or is this also initiating that process?
Yeah, definitely two elements of that. This would initiate the process around exploring that, and I just want to remind the board and the community that both buildings have been red tagged by the fire department, which means that they're a significant hazard to, having people within the buildings themselves. I think it is listed within the historic registry with the city of Oakland, but it's not necessarily on the statewide registry around historic buildings. And I don't know if, Renita wants to add a little bit to that.
That is correct. It was identified as how the city terms it as B-rated structure, which is a historic importance by the city of Oakland cultural heritage. And it was considered as eligible for California Register of Historic Resources.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
I actually wanted to name a suggested amendment in that regard. So the new language that I'm suggesting that the resolution read, where the historic nature of this property is mentioned, is whereas both structures were classified as B-rated structures through Oakland Cultural Heritage Survey by the Oakland City Planning Department, but are not listed on the California State Historic Registry. And that language I just read into that clause is the only language that changes in that clause.
Is there a way for us to just have it on the screen?
Yes, I will send that to.
Yes, give me 1 second.
Thank you. Just want to make sure that the members of the public get to see it.
Actually, hold on
Yes.
1 second
Yes,
before I
of
do
course.
that. This thing.
Okay.
There was another question that I had while we're getting that up on the screen. So we are doing a feasibility study at this site as well. Would the demolition happening at the same time as potentially this feasibility study impact the timeline of the feasibility study or the possibility of a completed feasibility study?
Two components of that. One, as the feasibility study is moving forward, it does not address directly the building on the site. It's more doing what is the future development and some sampling and testing and things like that. So if anything, the demolition of the building could expedite the future use of the property itself. Also, within the historical nature, there is a process with CEQA, and you do have to go through a process with the city to demolition the building, and that is something that we would still have to follow that process if the city and if that was determined through the CEQA analysis.
Okay. And then I know that with one of our properties, we had issues with the federal government agency that we needed to get
The
support
EPA.
from. The EPA, yeah. Could that potentially be an issue with this building, seeing the age of the building?
Yeah. In terms of the buildings itself, the Ethel Moore building has had significant structural damage based on a fire that happened inside during when all the encampments were there. So we have done the assessment of that building itself. The building that has not been assessed it had been remediated within the 1025 building, the Paul Robeson building. However, there was an encampment inside, and so we would have to do some surveys, but it would be, we haven't identified anything inside the buildings that would require us to go to the EPA. It really was dependent upon the building materials that were used in the Ralph Bunch property that actually is the source of the issue at that campus, and we haven't identified any of those issues that would require us to go to the EPA. But with any demolition, if it was identified that there was some hazardous substance that was utilized in the building, that we would have to take care of that prior to the demolition.
Thank you. Mr. Hollis, do we have that?
Just real quick before I switch this over to the other side, is the whereas clause that you are amending, is it the whereas clause that states both structures are listed on the City of Oakland Historic Property Registry but are not listed on the California State Historic Registry? Is that the whereas clause that you're looking to amend?
Yes, it's the only clause where the historic nature of the property is mentioned.
Gotcha.
I didn't follow all the language you just said, but.
Right. So hold on, I would have to type that out real quick because I see your message. I just need to.
Okay,
you.
it's the second message that I sent, Corey, and I apologize.
Okay.
And thank you. As you're doing that, I see new folks joining our facilities meeting. Welcome. If you would like to make a public comment, go ahead and fill out a comment card. We are on G2 at the moment, and we'll be on G1, which is the Make Polluters Pay legislation that we're supporting, or will be supporting potentially this evening. I should say that I am drafting and supporting. Yes, and then we just need to get those cards in before the item is called. If there's anybody else that would like to make a public comment, please fill out a comment card before that item is called. Mr. Hollis, did I give you not enough time yet? Director
It's
Thompson,
a pretty
do you have any-
long
do you have any
paragraph. Give me a
questions?
second.
Well, no question other than, no question other than I just wanted to make sure that that we have followed all of the procedures for demolishing the building in terms of the historic reference of the building. I just wanted to make sure that that was taken care of.
And I think if you look at the therefore be it resolved comments, it does outline the process that the district has to go through to follow all of the rules and regulations around the demolition of the building, including the historic nature of the building. So it is definitely something that is included there. And we would have to follow a discrete procedure around that building. And one of just a small distinction around it, when you are when there's a demolition of something that is on a school site, the oversight of that is the Division of State Architects, which is not the City of Oakland. It is a different entity. So when we demoed the buildings at the Hillside campus, it was under the auspices of the Division of State Architects.
Okay.
That building was actually, the 1025 property was a building that was under the building code for the City of Oakland, so we have to go through the City of Oakland to address that building. And so that is the proper procedure around a demolition of that building.
Okay, does either going through DSA or through the City of Oakland, does it is there more of an investigation of the building, I think, before it's demolished?
There's definitely more oversight with the City of Oakland and rather than the Division of State Architects, particularly around the historic nature of the building.
Gotcha, okay.
And it would be under the City of Oakland that we would work with and partner with around the demolition through that process.
Lastly, I'd want to appreciate the last two clauses around making sure that our schools and nearby community organizations will understand the schedule and the safety procedures, because I want to make sure that none of our school sites are impacted, or as little impact to them as possible as this is happening. And also, forget now where it is, but that this does not declare declaration of surplus to this property at all. It just is, we're demolishing it, and we still have the feasibility study, we still have our board process to figure out
That's right.
what is going to happen on that site. Director Barry, anything else to add before we take comments?
And Corey's got it up.
Sorry, we have it up now.
Is that correct, Director Berry?
So on the microphone, she said yes.
I said yes, yes, thank you.
All right. So we do have the amendment.
Okay. Any public comment on this agenda item, Mr. Hollis?
There are no public comments or signed up for this item.
Okay. Thank you. Let's go ahead and take a vote.
All right. So on the motion to approve resolution, actually, yeah, on the motion to adopt by the Board of Education upon recommendation from the Facilities Committee of Resolution number 2526 -0189, authorizing demolition of unsafe and blighted structures at 1025 Second Avenue and preserving future redevelopment options while reducing impact on the general fund as amended. On the question, Director Barry.
Yes.
Director Thompson.
Yes.
Chair Bachelor.
Yes.
Motion is approved.
Thank you. Alrighty, now we're on G1, which is the supporting, I apologize, supporting the Polluters Pay Climate Superfund legislation. Again, this is a piece of legislation that I was made aware of through the advocacy of different organizations that we will hopefully hear from students again about tonight. But this creates a pool of money that can then be used for any mitigating any sort of fire or climate disasters that happen here in California. As most folks remember, in January, there was a terrible fire in Southern California where many, many homes, businesses, schools were lost. And there was a lot of concern as to how that community was going to rebuild and where their money was going to come from. Again, this legislation would create a fund in which polluters would have to pay into in order to then have districts or areas be able to access those funds if fires or floods or landslides or all of the terrible things that climate change is doing to our community occur. This is not any, we would not have to pay for any of this. This is just the support of a legislative item. And this would again encourage the state legislature to support the Superfund bill that is going to be before the legislature again next year. Any comments from my board colleagues before we go to public comment?
If I may, Chair.
Oh, motion, correct.
Yes.
I would like to make a motion to move this item forward.
Second.
There's a second.
And also, I didn't catch this up. Motion to approve.
Motion to approve, thank you. And there's a second.
Second.
Director Barry, did you have a?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to the champions advocates who put this in front of us. In my day job, I work for an organization called End Poverty in California. When the fires went down, it's a statewide organization, so obviously we support the work happening in Oakland, but we support communities across the state. When the fires went down in Altadena, Pasadena, and LA, we raised about $100 million to give direct cash aid to families. But the community at large raised over $100 million to support families who, by the way, are still living on tents in their property, right? So people have forgotten, but the community is still deeply affected by that. And it has been a sobering reminder to me that philanthropy is not going to save us. And our public system has to step up to support. And it's not just being responsive to disaster when it happens, but creating the infrastructure that is preparing us for it and that prevents it from happening. And so imagine what happens when people realize that they're on the hook for their behavior, for their decisions. And that's why I really support the narrative change of this, the behavior change of this, and so thank you. And I actually learned a lot because I didn't know about this until it was before. So, and I'm just grateful. So thank you.
Thank you. Director Thompson?
No, I'm in support of it.
Okay. So let's take public comment on this agenda item. Mr. Hollis, how many speakers do we have?
Yes. Currently, we have one, two, three, four, 5, 6 speakers.
Wonderful. We'll do about 2 minutes each.
Minutes.
I also just realized I misspoke. I said we raised $100 million. It was just $1 million. But the community at large raised $100 million. Since this is on the record.
Want to clarify. Thank you.
Just call 6 names.
Yes, please.
All
And
right.
if folks, when you hear your name, you can step up in however you'd like to configure yourselves, but step up to the mic and you will have 2 minutes.
And if I may, there are students who have signed the cards to recognize as students. They do have priority to speak first.
Yes.
Just FYI. So, 6 names are Edward Chow, Corey Zhang, Martin Luz, Naomi Pablo. I may not get this first name right, so I'll just say the last name is Cortez.
Okay.
And Alicia Pablo Geronimo.
Okay. Come on up, everybody. For those of you who just got here, we are on G1, which is the polluters pay legislation. If you'd like to fill out a comment card, you can still do so. We have 6 speakers currently. It's item G1. Go ahead.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alicia. I'm a senior at CCPA, and today I would like to talk about why the resolution should be passed. So for the main reason, as always, is for, first of all, everybody knows that we have lead in schools right now. So that's one of the big impacts that I see. So at CCPA, we've experienced a lot of that. We don't have any water fountains, so we would love for them to be fixed. And the second thing is at CCPA, I've seen that there's a lot of problems with heat, and that's another thing that this resolution would do and help us solve it too. And that would be all.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hello, my name is Luz. I'm an 8th grader at Urban Promise Academy, and I just turned 14. I think Make Polluters Pay is important because myself and my family are impacted by the pollutants and in our community. We live near polluters, and it is affecting our health. Instead of studying and focusing on school, I am here to advocate for Make Polluters Pay so that the damage polluters have caused to me and my community is corrected and so that they are aware of the damage they are causing. As a student who is affected daily by the effects of pollution, I strongly urge you to pass a resolution on Make Polluters Pay. Thank you.
Thank you. Next student.
Hi everyone, my name is Naomi Pablo. I'm an 8th grader at Urban Promise Academy, and I'm 13 years old. My personal experience with pollution comes from my sister. At a very young age, she developed severe asthma, and for me, knowing that companies like PG&E can contribute to pollution makes me worried, because pollution makes a big reason why people, especially young kids, develop illnesses like asthma. It's really sad. And it's not only my sister who struggles at school. I see other kids who have to sit out of activities because their asthma gets really bad. That's why I believe passing the bill to hold PG&E is accountable is important. I can help. It can help protect kids like my sister and many others from getting sick.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Corey Jong, and I teach 8th grade ethnic studies at Urban Promise Academy. I'm here to ask for the board to support a resolution on the Make Polluters Pay bill. I also organize with young people as an adult co-conspirator, and over the last 10 years, climate justice over and over is an issue that our students are saying is one of the most important things that they feel as a generation that needs to be addressed. And so in terms of the Make Polluters Pay bill, fossil fuel companies have known for decades that their pollution is causing the climate crisis, and they're putting profits ahead of public welfare. Specifically for this bill, it would help to fund community resilience and sustainable infrastructure, and also ensure that big oil, not the taxpayers, are paying for the damage that they helped cause. So thank you, everyone, for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, everyone. My name is Edward Chow. I am a resident in Oakland. I'm a graduate student at San Francisco State University, and I also work at the nonprofit Frontline Catalyst. I'm here to talk about polluters pay in support of it. I work on, I used to be a teacher at elementary school in Garfield, Achieve Academy, Arise High School, and I see a lot of the lack of spaces and infrastructure, not only when it comes to water, where our students can eat, the heat when it is around the summer months, and all the collective heat in the courtyards and stuff. And I see a lot of improvements that this bill can pay for the infrastructures that our students and our youth work at when they're in the school space. I think for me, on a personal level, I grew up in the Fruitvale community, and I see a lot of things changing, good, and a few things that are changing, I think, in a way that I don't think should happen. And one of them is the rise of fires, neighborhood fires. I've seen them happening from faulty wires, from bad electrical work in the power lines, and I see it as a high risk. Last year in my neighborhood alone, there were about 3-4 house fires within a 4-block radius. So for me, not only does this polluters pay extend to the schools, but to the residents who are impacted by these fires. I don't have much else to say other than that, but I just am in support, and I'm just happy to be here and give my piece. Thank you.
Thank you. I know we
if
had
I
some
may, Chair
additional
Bachelor?
speakers. Yes, go ahead, Mr. Hollis.
We have 2 additional speakers. It's Daniel Henkel and Karishma Lopez Rentera.
And one more.
And Medina Adeline.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Daniel Henkel. I go to Fremont High School. Some things that I need to be worked on are my bathrooms, because there are broken doors, broken seats, sinks, and soap dispensers, and broken holes in the wall. There's things that make me feel uncomfortable, because there's barely any water fountains in my school that are working at this moment because of the lead situation, because the district hasn't got to fixing the things in my school, and the staff having to lock the bathrooms are it's ridiculous for what they have to do to take certain measures of kids not going to the bathrooms. And I feel like they shouldn't have to do that, because there's certain things that students need and what the staff need. We need working water fountains in our schools. What I need personally for my schools, for our schools to be taken care of. I want this bill, the polluters bill, to be passed so my school can be taken care of properly. Because this is absurd to where I have to deal with not having a water fountain in my cafeteria. that is not working. And it's just, it's ridiculous of what there is not working and working in my school. There's lead in our systems. Filters have to be changed in our water filters. Our water fountains have to be changed. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Next speaker.
Hi, my name's Adeline Medina. I'm a Frontline Catalyst youth leader. I'm also a student at Oakland High. I'm here because we don't deserve being polluted to get sick because of fossil fuel companies. I've seen how climate change impacts our community. I say this because of our one personal thing that happened to me. Specifically, 2 years ago, one of my friends died because of fossil fuel company. She had asthma. She developed asthma when she was 12. And well, she did not have it before. And I know this was because of fossil fuel companies, because it was just random for her to get asthma and start to and then she passed away because of it. Also, this is important for the students because it's not only some, it's mostly kind of almost all of them who are getting sick because of it. And I'm asking you guys for you to support support it to stop the pollution, because it's not only in impacting older people, but also younger kids, teenagers, and all that. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Karishma Lopez Renteria, and I'm here for students like me who want change. We want clean communities, schools, and clean lives. Polluters come into our communities and they poison our minds, fill toxins in our lungs, and expect us to accept that treatment. I am urging you to support the Polluters Pay Resolution so that we can work towards restoration and have our neighborhoods restored after the decades-long struggle that fossil fuel companies have put us through. I want students to be able to go to school and worry about just learning and not seeing everyone around us getting sick and doctors not knowing why, but us knowing that it's the pollution and knowing that we just want we want support, we want love, and we want to see that from the people who can help us with this bill, and we want the polluters to pay. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe our last speaker. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Good evening, Facilities Committee. My name is Xochitl Cortez. I'm the Executive Director and co-founder of Frontline Catalyst. I'm also a parent, alumni of Oakland Unified School District from K to 12, and also put my children through the school, and currently, as Frontline Catalyst, work with a lot of youth along Oakland Unified School District. I'm here in strong support and happy to hear that favorable committee who is seen as the Polluters Pay Climate Superfund Act to be a resolution of Oakland, and affirming its resolution that we see the need for climate resilient investment in our schools. Our young people are already living with the consequences of the changing climate, with extreme heat days, with wildfire, contaminated water systems, and toxic air. And these conditions are not abstracts. They're realities for our communities. As a personal person who also has children with asthma, taken to emergency hospitalizations, but also a father who died of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is also an environmental toxins. Always just lived here along 880 in Oakland, from Highland Elementary to Merrill's, which now is known as Bridges, went to Fremont High School. So I've been all over Oakland, but I can tell you that I also went to Claremont Middle School and other schools in the Bay. And there is a difference between what we see in the flatlands and what we see in more affluent communities. There is a difference between the parents who are able to fundraise so that they can get some, parent emergencies for the schools, which is great. But then there's also other parents who are under-resourced and unable to be here. So I'm just very proud for the children and youth who are here today to speak for those communities whose parents aren't able to speak for them. But these conditions, as they're not abstract, they're really threatening the students' not only health, but also learning and their safety. So to protect our students, we need climate resilient infrastructure solutions. And so part of this infrastructure or this resolution is to really think about climate resiliency. And Director Batchelor and I had another conversation of what does that mean? That we're not fixing the problems by also putting other fossil fuel enriched products in our schools, such as astroturfs and so forth, artificial turfs, so that we not only pass this resolution, but to think as a facilities committee about what investments are we doing, even if they might be short-term solutions, what long-term impacts do they have? So I just wanted to use my time and say that as well, and thank you very much for supporting not only the youth, but the future of our Oakland youth here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody. Is that all the public comments, Mr. Hollis?
All public commenters for this item have been called.
Okay, wonderful. And I just, again, want to appreciate all the young people that came out today, and just sharing your stories about how this has impacted you. Because again, I think it's really important that we highlight, as Director Berry was saying, what are some of the things that we can do now, but also what are the structures that we can create so that we can get more resources for our communities, for our students, and that those resources come from the folks that are polluting our environment, that are polluting our air, and that they don't always have to come out of the pockets of everyday people, of working people here in Oakland. So with that, well, let's just go ahead and take a vote on this item. Mr. Hollis.
Yes, Chair Batchelor. So on the motion to make an adoption or to move an adoption by the Board of Education upon recommendation by the Facilities Committee, which is to adopt of resolution number 2526 TAC 0188, supporting the Polluters Pay Climate Superfund Act and affirming the need for climate resilience investment in schools. On the motion, Director Berry.
Yes.
Director Thompson.
Yes.
Chair Batchelor.
Yes.
Item is approved.
Yay. So just so everyone knows, that that means that this will move on to the full board at a subsequent meeting. Our next meeting is December 10th, but it could also be at the January meeting. It just depends on when it gets on the agenda. But would love and appreciate all of you to join for that meeting as well. And I'll be in touch with your adult co-conspirators to let them know. And yeah, would love to just hear your stories as well if you aren't able to make it on e-comments so that we have that information. With that, we are moving on to going back to F. So we are on F1, which is the facilities F1, 23-2846, facilities deferred maintenance program, facilities planning and management. Mr. Thomas.
Yeah. Good evening. And actually, for some of the folks that were here that talked about water quality issues, you might want to stay for this one. Definitely something that we've been working on, and there's going to be some more information here to provide some updates to the board. One of the things for you all, specifically for the Facilities Committee, we are seeing this as an opportunity for you to all chime in, particularly around some policy recommendations, some potential staffing implications, and costing as we move forward to address the water quality issues in OUSD. And so this is a update to that, and I do want to actually thank Ms. Littlejohn over risk management that is here, and also Ms. Abdul, who has been running kind of the water remediation and leading that work, and she was here at the last meeting to kind of provide some updates. This is a little bit more in detail around the work that we've been doing. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the inclusion of the water quality issues within the facilities master plan. We did do an amendment to that master plan to include it so that we're getting kind of our experts to look at that. what we're doing to build high water quality standards in OUSD. There are some dashboards that we intend on launching on January 1 of this year that will allow for students and staff to look at and find out where the systems are and what their current status is. We're going to talk a little bit about the cost of maintaining the systems, the cost of staffing, and then give the board an opportunity, the facilities committee, to chime in on some of the challenges that we faced over the life of the water quality policy and get some feedback from you all and questions that you have so that we could take that into some future updates on that board policy. So just to kind of provide a little bit of context of how we're addressing to make sure that we're providing safe, clean drinking water to all OUSD students and staff. Strategy 1 was emergency installation of flow water systems across the district. And we have over 250 that are now installed, and then what it's going to cost to maintain and upkeep those. Comprehensive diagnostic testing, replacing and repairing identified fixtures that had elevated levels, including signage and visible cues to the community as to which drinking sources were tested and had been verified to be under the 5 parts per billion, working on our kitchens and improving the water quality in our kitchens, and then improving our communication system. So just as a refresher, you've seen this slide before. Also, in the past, this had really been something that was siloed with one individual. And we've expanded the team that addresses water quality issues to include the facilities team, the systems and services team, risk management, our comms department. We have a flow water team, and of course, working with some external partners to do water testing and environmental laboratories that are doing the testing for us. I do want to highlight what is very, very different from when this issue emerged for the district in 2017, and I'll just keep saying it because I think people don't always realize that the board has moved a significant portion of funding, which is $20.5 million in Measure J and Y and one-time funding to address this issue. So there is funding available for us, and the previous item, I think it's really important to just highlight that those are the types of funding sources that could complement the work that the district is already doing. So I'm going to turn it over to Pranita, who will give a quick update on what will be included in the facilities master plan that will really specifically target the addressing water quality issues.
Good evening, committee and committee members. I'm Pranita Ranbise, Executive Director for Facilities Planning. To talk a little bit about how we're incorporating this effort into our facilities master plan. So just as a reminder, we're in the process of updating, the district is in the process of updating its 2025 facilities master plan. So as part of that development process, currently we have collected all of our facilities conditions and educational adequacy, all of the data that we've collected. We're trying to incorporate that along with the data that has been tested for water quality as well, and defining both short-term and long-term strategies to be in terms of how we can address some of these water quality issues. So this master plan would then include 2 types of strategies. Again, like short-term would be more for some operational fixes, and long-term would identify some capital improvements that we can make to address water quality issues. We will be integrating the already collected data, and then through the master plan also identifying what our future strategies would look like, whether that's testing, management, and communication as well. I'll turn it back to you, Mr. President.
Sweet. Okay. Oh, that's all good. Okay. So, and a couple of things just to highlight from this is grounded in board policy, is that the district was one of the first districts in the state of California to adopt the 5 parts per billion or lower. And so we are currently utilizing the 5 parts per billion, less than 5 parts per billion, as our guideline across the district. And that is more protective than the federal and state limit of 15 parts per billion. Just so you know that we are adopting the EPA 3 Ts as our, which stands for training, testing, and taking action. That is kind of the framework that we've been using to drive the work that we're doing. We're not making this up. We're following EPA recommended guidelines. We did comprehensive testing, and just to give you some of our peer and local policies around this, San Diego was the first to go there, but Oakland Unified School District immediately followed with 5 parts per billion. And really what we're trying to do is follow the implementation to match the expectation of board policy. So one of the things that is out there, and we have created some guidelines that is available to staff. It went out in some of the district communications so that they know the best practices around water quality and what to do within their classrooms and spaces to access water. So, there's the QR code for people to be able to access, to distribute that, to put it in newsletters. Kristen is here who helped develop the tool. So just really like trying to get information out to the community around how to identify where the drinking sources are within the district that meet our water quality standards. And one of the things that you heard in some of the comments was, it's interesting information around, particularly I was struck by the Fremont High School example where you heard the student talking about water quality issues at Fremont, right? And we know that in the most recent round of testing, everything at Fremont has tested below the 5 parts per billion. And Fremont is one of the schools that has new construction, and we have invested a lot in that campus, right? And there's a flow water system within the cafeteria. So like some of this is really just communication and information that needs to get out to folks because there is a level of distrust around the water systems. And part of this is to restore trust. And so one of the things that is really, really hard, the analytical reports, which historically have gone back to 2017, has been the way that the community can look at those reports to validate that the water sources are meeting the safety standards that we've established. They're really, I have a science background, I have a degree in environmental science from UC Davis. It's even hard for me to read some of those reports when they change the numbering and the dosage and things like that. So we have created some dashboards, and these are in development, so just really wanted to share with you all. This is the first opportunity that anybody's really getting to see what those platforms will look like so that you can see what will go live. And if there's any feedback, please feel free to stop at certain points, but at the end, we'll have a break point where you can ask questions about this. But I'm also happy to take questions as we go through it. This dashboard is active, and I just want you to notice how much blue is there, right? We've coded it so that if there's a flow water system or a filtered drinking system for every 100 students, which is kind of the aspiration that we've moved to. If you remember the last time I showed you this, there were lots of orange, red dots on it, and we were not really even at the 200 point. You can see that the vast majority of our schools have much more access to flow water systems or filtered drinking systems within that are testing far below the 5 parts per billion. For the most part, almost all of those are testing below 1 part per billion, right? Which is so students do have access to water throughout the system. And I mean, a key feature is for families to get, into the fact that every student should have a water bottle with them so that they can refill it. We have distributed almost, I think it's well over 50,000 water bottles out to school sites that, even when I walk to school sites, I'm always looking, do you have any left over that you could give to students? So this is active and has been active for quite some time. What we are going to talk about is the other dashboards that will go live at the beginning of the year that show where the testing is. And so this is kind of a dashboard that will go live in January that shows where that all the testing has been done and everything is below the 5 parts per billion. And you'll see this is one version of it where blue is identifying that all of the fixtures within the school are meeting that expectation. And green is where we're working to repair some of those. There is the data behind this. So this is an example, and you heard CCPA, somebody talk about CCPA as an example. You could see that currently total tested fixtures at CCPA drinking sources is 33. 30 of them have passed. 3 fixtures had elevated lead levels, and they are currently offline. So you see that 90% of the fixtures have been repaired and are testing below the 5 parts per billion. There's a slider over on the right that if you wanted to slide it, you could check and find out which campuses we're below the, you could pick your threshold, like 80%. I want to see who's at 80%. But you could see the number of schools, and this is just alphabetical, that are actually meeting 100%, which is, we have never had that level of robust testing and reporting around district-wide. This is what it looks like in the customized view. So you can see the operational status is operational right now. It has passed, and you can see that the initial testing was done and it passed. Where we took a drinking fountain out and replaced it with a new filtered system, you see the green new filtered station, and you can see where the locations are. And you can imagine if we're doing this across the entire district, this dashboard is massive, and you can filter by school site. This happens to be McClymonds, right? So like one of the things that you've often heard is McClymonds and water quality issues. It is one of the schools that when we retested it, not every single fixture that was tested passed. It doesn't mean that we don't have problems at times with like the drainage getting clogged because people are pouring things in the drains and things of that nature. But in terms of access to filtered water, this is the most recent results that are there. And then you could see what it looks like when we start going through retesting. This is the CCPA site. You could see that the operational status tells you which ones you can access. You could see where we put in new filtered stations. That's the first row. You could see that there are 4 that have been removed. And you'll see why is that they had elevated levels and we removed them so that we could replace them with a new drinking fountain or some other source. I point to the girls' gym and the locker room entrance. Notice that initially it was tested at elevated and it then was retested and then passed. Why did it pass? Because we had done repairs to it to replace either the bubbler, the angle stop, or some of the things that were testing elevated. And you could see that if you scroll over, you could see the testing rates that are showing the parts per billion at the one that passed after 2 passes. So this is the type of information that we see going live. And I don't know if you want to pause, because this is a good pause point to talk about one of the community tools and maybe take some questions from the board. Or if you'd like me to continue to go through it, I can go through the next 2 parts, which are staffing, costs, and kind of some of the challenges that we faced in addressing it.
Director Thompson, go ahead.
Yeah, allow me to ask this quick question. First of all, I want to appreciate all of the work that has gone into this entire process. But something concerned me, just like, and I'm glad you mentioned it, the young man from Fremont who actually made those allegations. And so I'm really excited that you're utilizing, or you're speaking with, or you're interacting with the effective teams, and also the 3 T's, the testing, the training, and taking action. And so with that said, I'm just wondering about, have you incorporated, or do you plan to incorporate an extensive method of communicating with students and families about the water thing, so that I'm sure you understand that as board members, I'm speaking for my colleagues, but I know I do. I get tired of hearing adults or students talk about what's not happening. And so I'm wondering if we're doing a good enough job of communicating what we're doing, because we spend a lot of money on these flow water systems, a lot of money. And so I'm wondering if we're also being robust with communication, so that students and families, or even adults in the community, they're not complaining about how things are not working for them at their site. I mean, for example, I hear individuals talk about what's happening at McClymonds, and then I hear this wonderful story about all of the faucets passing at McClymonds. And so I'm wondering, where is the disconnect? There has to be a disconnect someplace for people to make assertions when, I can't say they're not true, but people make assertions. I'll just put it that way.
I think this is a great, and I just actually, I don't know if Neela wants to step up. One of the things that is amazing about her as an individual, but also as a OUSD employee, when she hears something like that, she literally will go to the site the next day to go and check on it to confirm. So like when he was talking, I was like, Neela? And she's like, no, I've been there, I've been and tested the site. And so like, you have talked about Fremont, and maybe you could comment with respect to kind of what our process is when we hear things like this, and then I'll talk a little bit about the communication side of it.
Yeah. So communication, I think you asked where's the broken piece, and I think the broken piece is it lays with mistrust in the whole system, because historically, when the issue was reported, it wasn't taken care of timely, and then it kind of things fell through, and then people were confused of where we're standing now. So a lot has changed, but I think it's hard for communities to now trust that the fix actually happened. So what I do is I get a lot of emails from site leaders, so principals email me. Last time I came to the board meeting here, the parent had a kind of worry about Manzanita School. So I go to the school, I make sure I check out what the problem is, and then I communicate with the site leader. So I usually speak to the principal and to address the problem, to then communicate and relay the information to their community within the school and staff and their parents and students. And another thing that I did, me and Pranita, for example, in McClymonds, we went. There's weekly meetings, bi-weekly meetings that are happening at McClymonds. So the very first one, I think, that was happening, I joined, and it was specifically around water, and I wanted to be there to answer questions. A lot of parents showed up. They had concerns, valid concern. And I walked with them to, they were like concerned about some flow waters not working. So we walked the site together with the principal. I showed them that everything has been fixed. It was an issue 2 weeks prior to that, but we have to report it to flow water. They have to send out a technician. So it takes some time, but I make sure the communication is transparent. Another thing we did, me and Preston went to a meeting with all the principals and created a spreadsheet a form where principals or staff can submit requests for me to come out to them or schedule a Zoom meeting to speak about and address any concerns regarding water, answer any questions about the testing results. So I have been communicating with them as well, based on like when they want to communicate.
And let me, I think there is a challenge as to who the critical messengers are. And I am not you aren't, I'm not. It's like some of this is sustained efforts to show through our actions that we are improving the water quality in the systems. And that is, if you think about, nerd out a little bit on brain science, right? The young man that came up here and spoke about his experience at Fremont, when we have bad experiences and distrust, it imprints on our brain in a way that is significant and protective. That is natural biology for that to happen for that young man. I don't dispute anything that he said, because he did experience that, and there was a moment in time that is locked in around it. The only way for us to build confidence in our systems across the, and this is the previous item, is really around distrust for the way that fossil fuel organizations have worked around climate issues, right? So I think we as a district, and this is where it comes into that's why I always bring up the $20.5 million that are invested in a long-term invested in fixing this. We have to show this year after year after year, and it will get better and better over time. And we can do better. I mean, the critical messengers with students are absolutely our teachers. Right? Director Thompson, I know in your classroom, if you are talking to kids about water systems and exploring all the issues in a really authentic way, and then talking to them about how to critically question things, getting them to, drink water bottles and getting them to challenge the system is an important part of becoming a conscious citizen and moving forward on these things. So I do think that it's very real around the experience that kids are having. And I think, we want to, and as these tools come out, create some videos that go out to the community so that people can understand what the work is that has been done around it. But I think your question is the hardest part in this policy is when you hear that essentially you had this elevated level in your space, it does imprint on parents, students, families, the community around, wow, I didn't realize that I was in this condition. And I think our goal is to create a system where you don't have elevated levels. And I think that's going to take time, but I think we've put a lot of those 6 strategies in place, and communication is probably the area that we need to focus the most. Director Barry?
Dang nabbit. I was also going to ask a question about communication because, I mean, it's the thing that like people do last. Like when you build a strategic plan, you think about it last, and it is not an afterthought. And so the students and families who will walk into a scenario where things are materially different don't need a different set of communication. And the student who spoke today, he'll be gone, right? So I'm also wondering, especially because the facilities internship program is on the agenda, why not dedicate a student or two to think through the comm strategy for facilities? You visited a few classrooms, high school classrooms, to get feedback on facilities master plan. Like, those students are ambassadors, incredible messengers. Certainly their teachers are, but they talk to each other, and then they're going home and talking to their parents and caregivers. And so I do think that there are some tangible things that we can do today that's not waiting for the change to occur as the proof point and the evidence. And we need to be prioritizing some of that right now.
That's great feedback. Thank you.
Yeah, I think one thing that I just keep hearing over and over again is, like, how can we make sure that we have access to water, like, where students actively are throughout the day? Like, there's a lot of, like, it's in the gym, but the gym is locked, right? And I can't access it. Or, it's Skyline, where it's like, I'm in the field, there's like no way to access water in the field. So then, like, coaches and other folks are having to navigate and figuring out how to do that. So I think trying to figure out how we can keep our kids hydrated and our students hydrated throughout the day, and our staff, I think, is going to be important. The other piece I want us to start thinking about is, how can we have some internal staff training so that we're not having to wait for flow water to get someone there, that we are already, like, training up our buildings and grounds folks to be able to do some of that maintenance work. So again, we're not, like, waiting around for folks, but I'm eager to get to the staffing and costing. Because because I want to figure out how we kind of balance the budget challenges that we have and some of that costing. And I know that there is a bond contingency. It's not for us to tap into at this moment because we do have, like, major projects coming up. But in thinking, as you said, of, like, what are the long-term kind of strategies that we could be thinking about, like, how would we kind of pay for some of that long-term, potentially using some of those bond dollars?
Why don't we go through the next couple of slides, and then we can come back to maybe a second round. I did want to just highlight one important distinction, Chair Batchelor, that you just made about, we have been very much the whole team going on the ground to schools to see what's going on. And I just wanted to, we were at Edna Brewer looking at, like, kind of their system, and we saw the field and where the kids, and they all had their water bottles lined up, and there was, like, a really old, outdated drinking fountain that was there. And it got us to start thinking about, like, oh, we really need to get outside and make sure that there's water bottle filling stations that are filtered at places. And so there is going to be actually an amendment coming to one of the grants that we've actually worked with CAL FIRE to actually, as we were doing living schoolyards at MLK and Manzanita, one of the realizations that we were having as a team was, wait a second, we need to go out and start addressing the outdoor access to water in the places where kids play. And we're currently, it will be coming up as an amendment to utilize some of that funding source, and already have approval from the state to utilize it as the second half of, with the carryover funding, to start paying for the implementation of water systems in the sites where we put living schoolyards, to connect the water systems with the living schoolyard investment. So that will be forthcoming. And so these are some of the funding sources that we'll be able to use to address some of those issues. So it's not just coming out of the bond.
And I think along those lines, I would also want to see like if there's a way to use like the similar, because I know a lot of our schoolyards also have garden spaces,
That's right.
right? And we've talked about, you know, if there's lead in any pool of water or any part of the building that has, that then is the water that is watering our gardens. So if there's a way to, you know, connect that system so that it can be used for not only drinking, but also as like the gardening system
Yep.
for that.
And that is, let's go through the costing and then, so we'll go through the costs. And actually, this is one of the things, we had a test, and this is not actually in here. So this is not a full costing of all the things, right? But there's like, for example, we found really old hoses that were being used, and we just bought new hoses and distributed them out to all the garden programs. I do want to say that like, this is what we're looking to sustain. This is the maintenance cost. So for example, in each of your major facilities projects, we are replacing the piping and infrastructure in all those schools. That is a significant cost. It's a one-time cost, but McClymonds, Roosevelt, Garfield, CCPA, and MLA will all get new infrastructure around the plumbing because we're going deep in those schools to replace the infrastructure. So like, this is the rest of the spots, right?
But just to clarify, for CCPA, it's in the new building.
It's in the
not
new
in
building.
any of
That's
the-
exactly
okay.
right. Where the new facilities modernization work is happening, it is going throughout those buildings. So that's not here. What you're seeing here is kind of what we feel like it is going to take to sustain ongoing. So the flow water station replacements, remember, things will age out and need to be replaced at a certain point, right? So that we're anticipating that annually you're going to have to replace about 35 units, which is about $250,000 in total ongoing replacement costs for that system. The flow water system, at the time of this, we had 251 active units. To do the maintenance, the upkeep, the replacement of the filters is about $522 per unit. That's $131,000. And Director Batchelor, we're definitely looking at working not only with our buildings and grounds team, but the custodial team to be able to clear some of the clogs that happen, because most of the issues that happen are clogs with the drains because something got trapped in there and starts overflowing and the site unplugs it. That's the primary issue. But so that is there. One of the LK is the other filtration system that we use that has lead filters within it. And that is a lower cost in terms of the filter replacements, and that's the cost for that. And so then we have a lot of inline systems that need replacement. We're going to be putting reverse osmosis systems in the kitchens that will need to get replaced. And then there's a big question within the board policy that it doesn't really speak to directly that we'll get to, is how frequently are we going to test? And this is the cost of testing, and this is the actual costing of the testing is about $375,000 a year. So what is our commitment to being on a yearly basis, on a every 2 years? Like, there is a question about, as time progresses, how frequently we're going to test all the water sources across the system. I'll go to the staffing and then we can pause and questions. So one of the things that I just want to remind that OUSD has 108 sites, right? That does include some are school sites and some are non-school sites. Some are charter schools. We have a responsibility to take care of all of our properties and ensure that the water systems are there. We believe that you're going to need 1 FTE of staffing. And I want to say that most of the staff that's been working on this, non-B&G staff, has been funded out of one-time funds. So I just want to name that right now. So that individual would do coordination, data reporting, EPA, CDPH compliance, communication with site leaders, dashboard development, maintenance, data integrity. The biggest issue is tracking all the data points that are happening across the system. If you're doing testing on even 1,000 sites, you're going to get 1,000, data reports that need to be updated and then communicated out. Right now, we currently have 2 people that are going around doing the testing, doing the signage, certifying. They got certified and trained, but like they are the ones that go out to the field to make sure that the stickers are up and make sure that the testing is done properly, to make sure that the filters are within date, all those things. We were able to leverage all of the plumbers to do this immediate emergency work, and there are 10 FTE and plumbers that are all in B&G. We do believe you're going to need an additional 1 to 2 dedicated plumbers, and those are the staffing costs for that, to actually replace all of those filters. There will have to be a rotation where you're replacing filters. There are other school districts, and this is a debate between what East Bay Mud had suggested in their initial recommendations to the district, was not to move to filtered systems, to just replace all the pipes, and because it does mask like what the problems are. But there's no way with a district this size that you're not going to get away from filtration in the immediate future. So you have to invest in a team of people that can constantly replace those filters in an ongoing system. When we dedicated all of our B&G staff to go and do the water systems, you heard Fremont High School talking about bathroom issues. Many of the restroom issues are caused by students damaging the restrooms, right? They weren't prioritizing that. So you would have toilets that would be out of order, there would be restrooms that needed repair, and we focused on the water systems at that time. So like, there is an opportunity there, like to, at some point, to leverage our own plumbing team. But in the initial phases of this, you do have a lot of deferred maintenance and a lot of routine maintenance that needs to happen at the sites. And we put a lot of that on pause. And the buildings and the restrooms that they were talking about are brand new restrooms. So like, the condition of those restrooms had nothing to do with the actual restroom themselves, but had to do with conduct and supervision of students in those buildings. And I don't know if you all have seen some of those TikTok challenges where it's just like, you go in and destroy restrooms, which was a big phase. We had schools that kids just ripped sinks off of walls and kicked things, like that was ongoing, and that the buildings and grounds team had to go around and address those. So the system is complex, and so that is what we believe the ongoing staffing, and this is particularly in the master plan, in that facilities master plan. This is where we'll be looking at other districts and how they've staffed the systems to be able to address those issues.
And just to
Yep.
clarify here, so this is, so are any of these positions that you're talking about, which of these are currently funded by the one-time funds that you mentioned?
One,
So
the
top
manager,
one? Okay,
person that's standing to my right.
okay,
The 2 staff that are funded through contracts that were required through, it was.
the water testing
Emerges.
team?
No, but there was a maximum, but why did we have to do that? Because of the COVID. There was a COVID that we needed to have like certain consultants available to address some of the COVID related issues, because COVID has decreased in its prevalence within the district. We've been leveraging that contract to do some of the testing.
Okay,
So it's probably 2 people that are going around doing that, which could be district employees. That doesn't have to be,
yeah,
contracted. We were just leveraging the resources we had, and then likely 1 to 2 additional plumbers to dedicate to that system. So if you add that up, it's probably somewhere around $800,000 in staffing costs, new staffing. And we have some potential, like, there is a way that the bond program can support the ongoing remediation. And I just want to, like, the bond is for doing one-time work, right? The ongoing maintenance is the district's responsibility to do it. So you may be able to fund some of the staffing out of the bond if it's allowable for all the projects where you're replacing everything, right? But the ongoing maintenance has to come out of your dedicated resources that the district puts in place. And so we're going to work in partnership with the board to identify what some of those funding sources are, but it is very real, the conversation that we had last night around the district's budget situation. And I would just, I actually want to point this out because I think it's really important to think about. That 3% reserve that the district has, the reason you have that is when things go wrong in the system and you need to dip into it. that can be, like, a lot of districts don't have an amazing, I mean, the voters of Oakland have been amazing in supporting the bond and infrastructure for the district. Many districts don't have that, right? Some districts support their deferred maintenance fund in an ongoing way so that when you have an emergency, you have a place to go to, right? We have a sewage issue at one of our sites that just happened today that requires immediate, and I don't know how much it'll cost, but it is. That 3% reserve is so that when something happens, you can dip into that reserve to resolve that issue immediately, and then you build it back up. So there are real issues here, and we'll definitely work on expanding the resources that are available, looking at grants that come out with Proposition 2, which lead was the last one. We're looking at lots of opportunities to fund that, but it is something that needs to be an ongoing consideration of the maintenance of this. So I'm just connecting it to last night's conversation to today. And then, I don't know if you wanted to add.
I can add something to Director Barry. You asked a couple meetings ago to compare our system to other district systems. So I had meeting with Washington, D.C., and that's pretty, sizable district comparable to us. They have 120 sites. And their annual cost for lead is $4.5 million. That's their annual ongoing cost. And they have 2 managers. They have a whole plumbing team, about 4 to 5 people who are dedicated to lead and particularly replacing the filters because they also utilize the filters that have to be replaced. 425. Yeah, and then they also have a testing company that they utilize to do the testing annually that's contracted, and they have a whole, like, we build our internal system, they purchase Salesforce as their system, and that's what they use. So their annual cost with the size of the district similar to ours, with what their board supports, is $4.5 million, which is significantly higher cost than what Preston just presented.
Clarify one thing. Also, the way that DC Public Schools is funded is it's a partnership between the city and the district, so they can leverage city funds in a way that, yes. But it just to show you, in terms of the type of testing and the magnitude of the issues that they had, the level of resource that they bring to support the system and the infrastructure. Yeah. So I just wanted to, the governance structure of Oakland Unified School District is different than DC, but it is a model of a district that was addressing something and how they've staffed it for their school sites. There's one more slide, and I really, Rebecca, please feel free to jump in on this. I'm going to walk through a summary slide that really goes to the policy issues. And Board Policy 3511.3 is the clean drinking water. And I want to just, I didn't put the whole policy here, but I just wanted to name some challenges and see if the board, the facilities committee had some questions about it, because essentially the initial phase of this and us addressing the water issues, we did not allocate funding to address the problem, right? So I think what I'm lifting up for you here is that we do need an ongoing funding source for the ongoing maintenance of that, which is an unfortunate reality right now, but I just wanted to name it. Did not allocate staff and implied current staff could manage the workflow, right? That, like, essentially we weren't going to change the system. We were just going to raise our expectations. And so when we're talking about these staffing issues, you can't expect to fix the lead issues within water systems without actually dedicating staff to it. I can't do it on my extra time, because there's so much that we're managing. You do need to dedicate staff to it. It was not specific as to what would be tested other than consumable water. So we have only tested, and I want to just be really clear on this, we've tested drinking fountains, we've tested water bottle filling stations, and we've tested the kitchens within the district. We have not gone through and tested every single sink. We have put up stickers that say, this is for hand washing, right? And that is unclear in the policy as to how much you want to be testing on a regular basis. We've just essentially identified do not drink from sinks. Now, we believe that, with the testing that we do, we have some data, and this is why it's in the facilities master plan. That data set that we now have that's pretty robust gives us an underlying understanding of what's going on within the buildings themselves, and we'll use that to make our projections on what to do. But I do want to name that the policy didn't spell out where to test, and we were sampling at sites. We are now testing broadly everything. You want to talk about the public posting times?
So the public posting times, we normally, I think the board currently says within 1 day, and that doesn't happen, especially like when we were doing summer testing. I was getting about 10 to 15 results a day that had to be entered, filtered, kind of understood. Then I had to communicate with Rebecca. Rebecca had to send out, we had to standardize a lot of things. So we wanted to make a more realistic timeline when we're, setting expectations. We are going to communicate, and that communication has to be transparent. So for public, it will be accessible via dashboard, more, live. As soon as it's entered into spreadsheet, they can see it the following morning. For us to communicate, we gave ourselves about 24 to 72 hours to communicate with sites, business days, excluding weekends and holidays. And we were primarily over the summer focusing on schools and programs that are open and functioning. So sites with summer schools, those that were closed, we also communicated but didn't prioritize that as urgent. I would also like to speak to this board policy. Go ahead.
Can I just add one more piece?
Yeah.
I think if you're doing small sampling and you're only doing one school at a time, right, it's easy to meet that expectation. There were days in which, 15 reports would come in with tests across 30 different fixtures within that, and somebody needs to assess. Now, when we saw things that were elevated, we can take them out of service by bagging them, getting custodial there. But in terms of being able to communicate it effectively, there are challenges there. I just want to name in the policy. So let me let me walk through a couple more pieces. We did not articulate a district standard for the frequency of testing. It's not articulated in the policy, and I do think it's probably the most important thing for us to address in a revision. It did not specify well the type of testing to be performed. We moved to sequential testing, which is 3 tests on every fixture. There might be times when you use that, and there might be other types of testing that are done during other types of there are different options that the district has within the 3 Ts to do that. Public reporting needs to be explicit, and timing often challenging to coordinate with site leaders and other key constituents. Some of the results would go to the principal or other key constituents at the school site, but if the principal was out or that email didn't get picked up, often the communication was problematic and the community would get it and the site leader wouldn't know. So trying to sync up all the communication was difficult given the standards, and there hadn't been any administrative regulations that were developed to support the policy. The policy and the administrative regulations are one and the same, and I think that there might be a way to kind of address that. So,
and remind folks in the public who writes the administrative regulations.
Administrative regulations don't necessarily have to come to the board, that it's something that staff would hold. And so this is one of the pieces where you go back up to the second bullet point, which is did not allocate staff, and implied current staff could manage the workflow, right? And so there is a nexus between those two. And so I think what we would like to do is bring a policy revision this year, and then for us now, based on everything that we've learned, develop the ARs that go along with that so that those two things are in alignment with one another. And you could see by June 30th, 2019, the board will review this policy, the district facilities, potential funding sources, and other relevant information to consider testing and remediation for lead and consumable water at anything above 1 part per billion. It was last updated in 2018 before I believe all of you were sitting on the board and before we were in our positions. So, yeah, so I just wanted to name that this is something that we are really, it's not something, it's not something we were looking for when this happened, but it's definitely something that we're all really excited to address because it's such a critical foundational piece to our water systems. And so we do feel like it's due for the update, and I just wish that we were doing it at a time that the board wasn't handling so many other complex issues. But this is an important one around our basic student needs. So why don't we turn it over to questions? And I think Rebecca being here also, if you have has been on this journey for a long time with an under-resourced system. And so she has a lot of the historical knowledge as well. So if there's any areas that you would like us to explore, any questions you have, we're happy to answer them.
Actually, did you want to just do the last slide, which is the next steps, and then we can ask questions?
So January 1. Sorry. January 1, we'll launch a dashboard to replace the old system for updating the community. We're still going to have the reports available so that if you want to, and there definitely are some community members that go through and ask lots of questions about it. And, you know, Neil is amazing at answering all those questions and getting back to people. We would receive recommendations from the facilities master plan in January because that is included now as like where they're looking at other systems and options that we have as a district. We would incorporate the positions needed to sustain the program in our budget development. So these positions we would be adding to our budget development, and we're, like I said, we're trying to find ways to creatively finance some of that for you all to. That's part of the typical budget development process. In February, we would bring some policy recommendations because we want them to be informed based on the facilities master plan work. And then in March, we would bring that to the facilities committee in February and work with, you know, the facilities committee. Even if a subset of you wanted to like support us in the development of that policy, we'd be happy to do that with you. And then we would bring that to the facilities committee in late February, and then in March we would bring it to the full board for adoption. There we go. Okay.
Thank you. Board colleagues, any questions? Barry.
I'm afraid that this is not going to be linear or coherent. So just the most recent question that came up is about this timeline. So you have February 2026 on here for incorporating positions into the budget development process. And is there a reason why you're waiting until February and not including that in the conversations that you're having right now?
We are absolutely thinking about what to present to you all. The task ahead of the board is to find $100 million worth of reductions. And
so you're like not adding new positions?
We did not want to complicate the matter for the board at this time, but we feel like by December 10th that there will be clear direction to staff, and then we could start incorporating this into that. We are mindful of the other issues that the board is managing right now. And we're also hopeful for additional state funding in Proposition 2.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to look at my notes and come up.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, a couple of things came up for me around the financing of all of this. You know, I think that, like, thinking about the restricted funding sources that we have, so like the developer fees, especially for the sites, like any and all work that we're doing at those sites, like CCPA, that are growth areas, if any of that could be tied to this. And be funded in that way. So thinking about how we can strategically use some of those restricted funds for some of this work as we phase it out, as well as like the bond as well, to figure that out as a part of this. And yeah, I think I feel like there are, we have some very unique board policies, from my understanding, but I have not heard, and maybe I just haven't looked at this. where there are areas where we have no administrative regulations. But seeing the challenges, not reading the policy itself, but seeing the challenges that you all have outlined, I'm like, I'm not sure how you would have all have created administrative regulations around this. So it's not that, it's just, yeah. So I think that as we think about like what changes do we want to see in the board policy, I think also having like possibly like a mirror process happening where we can already start thinking about the administrative regulations, because I don't want to speak for my colleagues, but I don't want to then create a situation for you all that you're like, I still have no idea what we're doing, and it still doesn't make sense. There are folks in our community, though, that have been advocating for 0 to be the number that we are achieving. Again, I agree, like there is no safe form of lead in any sort of water and paint or anything that should be in contact with our students. The challenge is, though, it's like, I don't want to, again, just create an arbitrary number that is impossible to get to without a path forward. That doesn't mean that we can't bring policy to Sacramento. We can't like advocate in different ways. We can't work with the city or the county. But yeah, I'd want to kind of figure that out as we're doing this. But yeah, I appreciate staff not only bringing some real numbers to us so that we can make sure we're thinking about this as we're going through the budget development process, but also considerations around board policy changes that we need to see. And again, I would love to see just like any just a draft from staff, knowing that, you know, you all are not the ones that finalize board policy or create board policy, but just a draft of what it could look like, so that we can start from somewhere. And then I like the idea of having one of us kind of work with you all to make sure that we're not in violation of the Brown Act as a subcommittee. And yeah, those would just be my thoughts. Anything else to add? Mr. Hollis, you had something? Okay, thank you. Anything else?
Yeah, just one comment.
We do have 3 other items.
Yep, this final one, no, this is incredibly helpful and
Yeah.
just, what's that? Okay, great. One of the things I wanted to say, and I'm just gonna keep connecting this back to other things that the board has been bringing forward. I can't tell you how important it has been, particularly around the administrative regulations and even the policy, to have OUSD staff on the ground going, like we walk the sites together with the plumbers, we do all that to understand the system. And this is also one of the places where you do want to have consultants that are experts in the area to validate the things that we're learning about the system and process. And so like, we really hope that we're striking the right balance between the facilities master plan, having some people from the outside, having some outside consultants work with us to provide best guidance around it, because it has been something that we have really, and it is in that slide, and I just have to give my deep appreciation for the buildings and grounds team, because they literally, there are many times that we've walked sites where they have immediately run out to do immediate repairs when we have elevated fixtures at sites. And so just, I do want to say that like, it has really been a grassroots like kind of campaign from the buildings and grounds department, our own internal team, to address this with a complement of outside resources that are supporting it. And I do think that once we have the plan, the outside need for consultants and feedback around this will really be owned by OUSD, because historically, in my time in the district, when we haven't had outside validation for the things the district's doing, the community questions whether we have the expertise and knowledge to be able to do it, right? And then if we only have outside consultants doing it, then it's the outside consultants don't understand Oakland. And I do think that in the work that we've been doing, we've absolutely had a balance of those to make sure that we're providing you the best guidance, because none of us really entered this with expertise around lead and water quality issues, but I think it has really grown internally within the team over time. So we'll definitely bring this back, and if that timeline works for the facilities team and committee, we're absolutely happy to like stick to that timeline and bring that forward.
Yeah, and I will highlight the fact that like, yeah, working as a team is wonderful. I want us to get to a place in which we're building capacity, not through crisis, but through like thoughtful planning and thinking about the future needs of our schools. And I know that that's not, That's not anything that we would have wanted to be a part of, but I'm glad that we are internally building some capacity around it as well. Director Barry?
Yeah, I think I'm stuck on the budget thing a little bit, because if there is no future where we're not investing in staff, then I don't understand why it wouldn't be a part of the conversation right now. But I also don't understand your process. So
It is very much part of the conversation around identifying restricted resources to be able to fund it.
okay. And I think related to that, the whole entire budget development process, not just here in Oakland, but like everywhere, again, given the statewide work that I do, like everybody's like trying to figure this out. And on your timeline, I think it would be interesting to see how you might map the time some of the state level advocacy strategies that we might have to consider, because having it a part of the timeline means we're serious about that being part of the solution. And it just has to be part of the solution.
And I also wonder along the lines of that, if there are similar districts or districts in a similar situation than ours that could do some joint lobbying together. Because I do think that, you know, sometimes folks are like, well, Oakland's just Oakland and y'all have to just figure it out. And it's like, if it's a statewide, if there's like other districts that are concerned about this, I think the building power together is going to be more helpful. So as y'all are having conversations with other people, I think it'd be helpful to know that. Okay, now we have to move on to the next item.
This was a big one. I appreciate you
Yeah.
giving us time to
which is F2 24 dash.
If I may.
Right, public comment on this agenda item. I apologize.
It's all good.
Mr.
There's
Hollis.
no public commenters for this item.
Oh, thank you. Now moving on to F2 24-2551, the renaming of Jefferson Child Development Center, Director Hutchinson and former Director Lerma. Is there a motion?
Yeah, I move.
Second.
Great. Is there a discussion around this item? Yes, Pernita.
Thank you for the opportunity to present the renaming of Jefferson CDC. Really excited to be able to report to you all our process and just how the recommendation that the community and the advisory committee and staff are making through this process. Just some background. In January of 2025, the board adopted a resolution, the resolution number 2425-0183, directing staff to initiate the renaming process for Jefferson CDC and related properties in alignment with Board Policy 7310, which is naming of facilities. The intent or the purpose of renaming the facility or Jefferson CDC was the district's ongoing commitment to equity, inclusion, and belongingness or a sense of identity, creating an identity for our community. So the renaming process was guided by our policy, but also OUSD's value and mission that shaped the engagement process itself. In terms of the renaming, the three, I guess, key highlights that I would like to share with you all is we focus on equity and inclusion, so transitioning from a name that did not necessarily reflect the community values, and then one that embodies OUSD's inclusivity and resiliency. The enrollment stabilization, which we have been talking about, I know is a broader district effort to strengthen community continuity between early learning, our elementary, our middle and high school, just that continuity throughout our system, and fostering that seamless transition. And then community cohesion, which was to build a shared identity and belongingness between Jefferson, CDC, and then Global Family Elementary School. I also do have one of our team members who is a community engagement specialist, Ray Bermudez, who led the process along with the site. And I would just, I think he's online, if he can just share a couple of words around the process and the community's feedback.
Yes, thank you, Pranita. Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Fantastic. My name is Ray Bermudez. I am with the Facilities Department. I am the Community Engagement Specialist, and I had the pleasure of being part of this process, which I started being involved this particular school year by engaging Ms. Sharon Travers, the site administrator. And we followed Board Policy 1220 around being able to form a community committee. And so once we did that, we identified some folks within the school site, along with some community members, community partners of the program, and also a neighbor and former educator there at Jefferson CDC. And so some of the meetings that transpired had to do with the project, committee advisory group, which we held a couple of meetings prior to a larger community-wide engagement, which we held with, with a lot of the families at Jefferson. And so the program itself is, 2 strong preschool classes. And, the program has about a little bit over 40 participants or 40 students, which we hosted roughly about, I would say 24 families signed in, officially on our signing sheet, but I counted a lot more families that participated. We held that meeting on October 16th, where they got, a lot of the background as to why we wanted and the importance of being able to change the name, and also giving them an opportunity to guide the process. Some of the things that came up during that meeting had to do with, they wanted a name that could easily be translated, and a name that their children can be able to say as far as where they attend school, which, therefore, Global Family Preschool was a chosen name, along with that desire of being able to have it, easily translatable. They also wanted to tie their program with global families. They mentioned that a lot of their students and families aspire to matriculate to the elementary school program there that's close by. And so, overwhelmingly, they did choose Global Family during that meeting, and we secured and finalized that recommendation on October 21st with the advisory committee, where they backed the sentiment of the families. And so I do have a couple of community members or committee members here on participating via Zoom. I hope that they're able to add some supporting comments, when they're given a chance. And we also have the site administrator, Ms. Sharon Travers, joining us as well.
They can go ahead, Mr. Hollis, if you want to lift
So we have Elena Castro, and Norma Nunez, and Ms. Sharon Travers, who are now categorized as participants. And so,
wonderful. Do you know if any of them are monolingual Spanish speakers that will need interpretation?
They are not.
Okay, thank you.
Just asking for public comment on this.
Comment from the committee, so it would continue to be a part of the report. If they could be taken off mute and be allowed to speak if they so choose. Can you say those names again?
Yes. So I see Elena Castro. She's a guest attendee. And then Ms. Norma Nunez is also a guest attendee. And then Ms. Sharon Travers. They're not deemed as panelists at this time.
Thank you. I think we're trying to do that. If you could raise your hands, folks, so that we can find you.
They're being promoted to panelists at this moment.
Thank you.
Okay. Hi, I'm Sharon Travers. I'm the principal at Jefferson CDC. And I would like to add to the discussion about the site that this was an amazing journey for our community. Not only was it an opportunity in terms of discovering what we would like our school to be called. Um, it was a journey that built, I guess, a stronger sense of unity for our teaching team, because we had some real strong discussions about what it was we wanted to do with the families that we work with and what we wanted to have accomplished with them as partners. When we engaged them originally, this process took more than a year to process, and two sets of families to finalize. But we were really encouraged by, especially at our October 16th meeting, that the fact that so many families came out to take this step, to make a decision about a name for a school, and the idea that what you are esteemed to be called has something to do with your future and your capabilities. And we really wanted to make a clear statement that we think that our children can be just anything they choose to be if they are prepared and if our partnership with our parents is intact. And so we were very excited about the process and just the excitement there was in the community with making sure that we made a difference by changing the name of the school.
Thank you. Do the other two panelists want to speak?
I will add that if I'm not sure if Ms. Nunez is able to address the panel at this point, but I will say that not only is she a member of the community, she was a very beloved teacher during her tenure at Jefferson CDC. And matter of fact, when she showed up for the meetings for the advisory council, parents were just so impressed that she was still connected to the school. And I'm so excited that historically we would have people coming and saying, nope, we're going to make a difference. We're going to make a statement about our community and about its future in this process. Our next participant here, Ms. Castro, is one of our instructional assistants at the school who also was a catalyst in ensuring that families really understood the meaning of the names that we were researching and had a very important role in, especially in that meeting that we held on the 16th, where we had a really interesting journey of working with families who speak Mom, families that are from other countries, but making sure that they understood the nature of the significance of the previous name and the names that we were aspiring to achieve. I'm just grateful that they came this evening, and if they can't share, I'll share for them my gratitude to the process, but also for their partnership in this.
Great, thank you so much for that. Really appreciate all the hard work and the teamwork that was there. Any other parts of the presentation?
No, that was it. There is one in terms of the fiscal impact. I think within the resolution we have identified that would be from bond measure J funds for any signage or any other changes that may need to be made from a material standpoint on site.
Okay.
I just add one of the things. There are many contracts that come to the board, and I also do want to I outline that we've also invested a lot in the site that came through the Oakland Children's Initiative to upgrade the facility. And I think one of the things when we think about our overall enrollment is just making sure that our families are clear that our early childhood centers like connect and in a real deep, and it's interesting to have known the history of Global Family and how that name came to be, and also how it also represents the values that Ms. Travers talked about, is just a real powerful testament to like the who we serve. Thinking about Global Family and Mom families there, like thinking about it as the entry point into our district. And so just really impressed with the level of discourse and really, I don't know if Ms. Travers is still there, but like we kind of waited for her because she was key in launching this initiative in the first place and meeting with Director Lerma. So really appreciate your leadership on that as well.
I would add to what was just spoken that if you take a look at Jefferson, you see the dedication of the families because the graphics that are on the building currently represent the journey that we took in naming the school. So every flower, every animal, all of those came from the aspirations of the parents, the things they wanted for their children, and what we aspired to create in creating a name. So actually, in some ways, it doesn't matter now what name we end up with because it's emblazoned in all of our hearts and on the walls of the building itself. That this community really loves their children and has really high hopes for their future. And we applaud that.
I love that. I love the murals that we have throughout the district, but I can't wait to go check out the new mural and the new signage and all of the different pieces that will make this community whole now with the new name. Mr. Hollis, do we have any public comment on this item?
There are no public commenters for this item.
Okay.
Chair.
Board colleagues, any comments?
Yeah, just a quick one, because I'm not really conversant with the demographics of the Jefferson CDC, but I'm wondering if you can assist me with that. And my rationale is, I think we talk about a lot in terms of equity and inclusion, and I want to sort of break that phrase down so that we actually have numbers to substantiate the phrase.
Okay. When you mention numbers, are you wanting to know numbers of families from various countries? I will tell you global is a good representation of our school. We have students coming from nations in South America, in Central America, Mexico, folks that are native born here. We have, I'm not sure how many languages, but at least 5 or 6 per classroom. It just really depends on which one, but we are definitely a beautiful array of diversity, which was the key piece to our name search. If we could go back and tell you about how that transpired, you would see that. It is a very strong point for why we needed to make sure that the name was changed to understand that we really do represent the global scene.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right, let's take a vote on this item, Mr. Hollis.
Yes, Chair. On the motion to adopt, on the motion on the adoption by the Board of Education upon recommendation by the Facilities Committee to adopt resolution number 2425, tax 0183, renaming of Jefferson Child Development Center and related property. On the motion, Director Berry.
Yes.
Director Thompson.
Yes.
Chair Bachelor.
Yes.
Item is approved.
Great. Moving on to item F3, 24-2581, which is the OUSD Facilities Internship Program, Facilities Planning and Management.
I forgot I asked to introduce this one. We'll try to make this one brief so that we can get to the next one. But I do want to say that my roots come from the classroom, and my roots come from establishing CTE connections. And I think one of the things that I am very excited about the future is to build a robust internship program that brings our own students from OUSD into the field of construction management. And I just wanted to highlight that the student that's actually we're currently working on the structural issues that were identified from DSA is a graduate of Oakland Unified School District that is now in an engineering firm. And so like there's a direct pipeline to our very own projects. And so I'm just really excited to be able to continue the work in the facilities department to be able to be the source of internships for our own students that will be kind of future out there in the workforce. And so just really excited about this. And so I'll turn it over to Pradina.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be able to present this information. We have been coming back to the committee every year to be able to present updates on our facilities department summer internship. This is an update item only, and we want to be able to share with you all how the 2025 summer internship looked like, but also just an overview of how we've gotten here and what has changed and how we are preparing for the next internship. Something that just Dr. Perry, you mentioned a few minutes ago in the water quality presentation about the potential for having interns or our school students join and support the communication strategy. On the slide here, you see there is an intern on the right. Her name is Ariana Murrell. She's from Oakland High. She presented last year, and she's with our facilities communication manager, who's also here, Kristen Eves. She supported the district during her internship program to create a communication strategy to include student voices as part of our bond program engagement. We have been incorporating a lot of that. We actually, for our facilities master plan, also engaged very heavily with our students, which again, her passion was to be able to identify how to bring student voices as we plan facilities for their future. So we want to definitely continue leveraging that and continuing that outreach. She did stay back to be able to support the 25 internship as well in an advisory role and to connect with the students directly and to kind of like just from her experience share, just having been in the same shoes, to share what really was really effective. So again, very briefly, I'll just give an overview, and then we can talk a little bit about what some of our goals are to move forward. This is the presentation from last year. I just wanted to, again, just put this photo out. She came in, presented, super excited. She did share voices of some of the other interns as well, and just key just share outs and highlights from their experience. I struggle with this all the time. Just wanted to name some of the firms that have helped us to expand our internship program. These are some of the firms that are across the construction, architectural portfolio, but also our department facilities and building and grounds as well was part of the program. These are some of the firms that also are part of our Bond Measure Y program. So again, just that connection with what we're doing in the facilities department, and then to continue that partnership with the firms. In terms of the participating high schools, we do offer this internship program in collaboration with our Exploring College, Career, and Community Options, which is the ECHO program. This internship program is offered across high school students for hands-on experience in architecture, engineering, program management, construction management, and general contracting within this field of work. We did have a we reached out to all of our high schools across the district, and we had about 8 of the high schools that have participated, with 100% of our high schools that offer linked learning pathways. Most of our interns participated in career technical education pathways, some of which are listed here to the right as well, and we've also found success in opening opportunities to students who are not enrolled in CT pathways, but have expressed a genuine interest in wanting to participate in the program. In terms of some of the grade levels, we have had a total of 25 students, to be exact, since 2022, from 10th grade to 12th grade band, plus we've had graduating seniors. We find it important to be able to offer these opportunities to our seniors who are matriculating out of the OUSD, out of the district, as these internships can be very valuable as you transition into internships, apprenticeship, trade school, undergraduate studies, or even just jobs. So far, we've had 64% of our interns as males and then 36 females, which reflect an imbalance in representation, but we want to continue to work with our ECHO program to align some of these goals for the female and male participation with any quantitative targets that linked learning may have also set out for these industries. I should not be there. Okay. So over the past 3 years, the student internship experience has achieved several notable successes. One win is that in orange that you see, the highlights have been increases in our suggested base internship pay rate to $18 per hour, which is $1.5 higher than the state of California's minimum wage. However, many of our external partners that provide these internship pay students to up to 25 per hour as well. This not only demonstrates our partners' belief in our students, but also ensures that we remain competitive with traditional job opportunities. We understand that many of our students also have responsibilities outside of the school which require them to work. So just by offering opportunities like these, students can meet their financial obligations as well. Another win is that in 2024, we were able to offer 16 student internal positions with building and grounds and custodial services. This represented a significant increase in the number of interns that and provided students with valuable opportunities across just the facilities department. We did experience a decrease from 24 to 25 in the internal opportunities due to limited funding to offer them in the summer in 2025, but we're definitely working through how we can expand some of those opportunities and then continue to collaborate with the ECHO program to find ways to make that happen. With that, I will turn it over to Kristen. A couple of more slides.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm Kristen, the Facilities Communication Manager. We'll try. If we go to the next slide. So just this is an overview of our internship for the 2025 summer. We had 2 interns this year, or we actually partnered with 2 companies, including Brailsford and Dunleavy and QKA, for 2 internship opportunities that were through the ECHO program. Excuse me. The first intern was America. America attended or attends Fremont High School. She actually worked directly with me as a graphic design intern. And some of the things America helped us with were designing templates to support community engagement. We would meet regularly for one-on-one meetings, and I would notice in her background she had drawings. So she was already a talented artist and wanted to translate her passion into graphic design. And we were able to set her up with some meetings with a web designer, Kyle Russ, who works for Oakland Unified School District, as well as a Brailsford and Dunleavy marketing manager, to show her that there's opportunities to take her passion of graphic design and actually make a career out of it. And I will go to the next slide. Okay, and then we had Tajnea, who attended McClymonds High School, and what was really great about Tajnea's internship is she worked with QKA, who was actually the architect for the Garfield Elementary School project. So you'll notice in the photo, she is holding up a design she created as part of the outdoor area that will hopefully be a part of the final design for the modernization. And so just between America and Tajnea's opportunity to get that exposure working with QKA and B&D, both highly recognized and decorated firms, is the touch that really is important when thinking about providing opportunities for students. And so I was really happy to support that coordination. Additionally, Pranita mentioned Ariana Morel, who started off as an intern with the facilities department and then she was actually hired on as a full-time or year-round intern with Brailsford and Dunleavy. So after school, Ariana was working with me directly, putting together that student engagement plan, preparing materials, analyzing data, and she really did some really strong work for us, and is now at UC Riverside. And in terms of her role as a student advisor for America in Tajnea, she supported them with helping them understand how to be more professional when working with their respective companies, and just answering questions that they may not have felt comfortable asking the folks with ECHO. You know, they're young and have their own way of communicating. And so that was a role she advocated for herself, and we were happy to allow her to do that. Just moving on to our goal with this internship program. It really is, like to Preston's point, just ensuring that we can continue to provide these high quality internship opportunities. It's not often that you hear people or young children saying that they are working at large firms and helping think through ideas to how to design schools that they are connected to. So it's really important for us to be able to drive this program and invite more students and really coordinate more opportunities and collaborate with the ECHO program and linked learning to ensure the exposure to these opportunities is clear. And then our next step internally is just to continue to do more outreach with these firms, particularly around, we know that we had some issues just being able to get firms to participate this year, but we want to be able to reach out to them early so they can prepare for these students, and we want to ensure that the curriculum is correct and will be helpful for them in their futures. So we're excited. But yeah, we're open to questions as well.
Thank you so much. Board colleagues, any questions? Director Thompson?
Not a question, but a comment. I'm really thrilled that you are doing this type of work. I sort of cast myself back a number of years thinking about Ed Dillard. And if you remember Ed Dillard stood for OUSD, offering opportunities for our students and getting them prepared to enter the world of work. And I'm so excited that we are moving in that direction. We're making sure that we provide excellent opportunities for our students. And I think that's a great way of getting our students to come back and work full time if we give them this opportunity to have an internship that helps to develop their skill. And I think you mentioned one person who had an internship but now went away to college. Yeah, I think so. And so I'm so excited that we in OUSD are providing these opportunities for kids. So we are taking the learning outside the classroom so that we actually give a real experience to kids. They can take that learning that they have to college with them and then think back on it and say, wow, it all happened in OUSD. Let me go back and give back to OUSD. So thank you very much, every single one of you, for making it a reality for OUSD.
Director Berry? Yes.
I don't have a substantive ad, but if anyone is in touch with Ariana, I met her last year at Oakland High, and I thought she was already in college. So I can't even imagine what she's doing right now, but I hope she's having a good time.
Yeah, I appreciate the program. I also appreciate kind of all the demographic information, because I think it does help us think through. Like, I was excited to see 10th graders on that list. Like, that is a huge opportunity, and that, like, is, as if you're building your resume at 10th grade, like, again, like, you might as well be going to college next year, you know? So I also wonder, like, at some school sites where, you know, there isn't like a direct connect to a program like this, like, how can, like, I've always thought through, like, how can we bring like dual enrollment or other classes or programs to school sites that may have like limited amount of pathways? Because again, a student may just be like, I'm not into the 2 pathways that are at my school. So like, what is another way that we're like kind of grabbing students to come back into the classroom and make sure that they're going to campus and you know, learning. I would also, I appreciate the demographic information around gender as well. I know that like went to the Building Trades Conference, and that was like one thing that they're like really advocating for, is making sure that there are more women and non-binary people entering the workforce and entering the field. And so however we can kind of support with that work, and whether or not that's like, again, just different firms that we can be reaching out to, or mentors within those firms. And maybe that's like, maybe it's just a little bit of a mentorship program or something like that instead of a specific internship. But I think figuring out folks in different fields. And I'm thinking also, like, I don't know how we choose the organizations that we work with, but there's like a lot of like nonprofit developers in the Bay Area too that are like female, women of color, you know. So thinking about all of the different ways that that we can provide our students with those opportunities, because we do have like a really kind of thriving ecosystem here of construction and building. Alrighty. There is no vote on this item. This is just a report out, so thank you so much. Really appreciate it, and look forward to continuing to get more information on this. Okay, moving to the public comment on this item, Mr. Holland.
I was about to.
There are no public commenters for this item, Chair.
Great, thank you so much. So now moving to F4 25-0103, Facilities Committee OUSD 2025 Facilities Master Plan Update, Facilities Planning and Management.
Okay, so I am going to, I know the hour is late, and you all had a long night yesterday. I'm going to skip some of the components of the slides that, if you look at the legislative history of this, it has been, the front slides on this you've seen them many times. A couple of things that I just wanted to lift up. There are really like multiple reasons why you do the facilities master plan. It's forward looking, and it allows you to reprioritize some of the areas within the bond itself, in the current bond, and also what future bond planning you would do. I want to highlight where we are in our current bond cycle, and then I'll jump into the presentation itself. We are in draw 2. So we are spending down the funding in draw 2 that was the board has already allocated within the spending plan. We are about to have a sale of bond, the third draw of the bond, for another $185 million. Once that funding is released, then the projects that were identified within that area will now have funding and can launch and move forward. And I just like, sometimes when you hear the $735 million bond, it is broken into quarters, and we'd be moving into the third quarter with the new sale of the bond, with the vast majority of your bond funding going towards the major projects. So of that 735, about 450 is going to those major projects. So just wanted to name that as to where we are in the life cycle. So one of the things that this is going to allow for the facilities committee and the board is, as you're hearing from the prioritization that's coming through our community engagement, how we might restructure the bond if all of our major projects come in on time and you have contingency left over. If there's, we already have shown some level of reprioritization around the bond and how we address the water quality issues. So I just wanted to name that the master plan becomes a tool for reprioritizing now and looking into the future in the next bonds.
And just on that point, so CCPA is one of those major projects. Is that McClymonds?
McClymonds, Roosevelt, CCPA, MLA, and Garfield. So those are the 5 major projects, and Fremont is a project that's ongoing, but that was actually a Measure J.
Mhm.
So those are the major projects that are moving forward.
And then with Garfield,
Those
there's funding from another source as well.
We're currently reevaluating the Garfield project based on some of the seismic issues, and we'll be bringing that forward in January to the Facilities Committee as a plan.
And we'll be kind of rethinking the Measure Y dollars at that time as well.
That's right.
So we'll be doing that all at the same time in January.
The spending
Okay.
plan.
The spending plan.
We have 4 projects that are in, or 3 projects that are in DSA right now. And so that's a key benchmark to understanding what the guaranteed maximum price would be on those projects as we understand the full magnitude of all the things that are needed with those projects.
Great.
And those would be McClymonds, CCPA, and MLA.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So I'm just going to skip down to number 4. So, and maybe a light touch of what we've heard. I'm going to point out this slide just for a second to just talk about how we've been expanding the resources that we're bringing in to support the capital program. I just would encourage the Facilities Committee to always reference this slide because we're constantly trying to find other mechanisms to do some of the work that is prioritized here. We talk often about the bond, but we're also looking for grant opportunities to expand all of those priorities as well. We're looking to expand those opportunities. We have done so much engagement. Here is the priorities that as they're coming out with the engagement, and then we'll get into the framework. Clearly, the number one priority that is being identified is overheating and climate controls within our classroom spaces. Oakland, historically, and many districts up along the coast in Mediterranean climate did not invest in infrastructure to provide both the age of the facilities, right, and kind of the climate that they were in were not designed and developed with, kind of HVAC and climate control in mind. And that's not just Oakland, that's San Francisco, that's all up and down the coast. Even some of the colleges also have issues with this issue as well. One of the new ones is just the overall quality of our restrooms, right? Like just in particularly in the secondary level, kids just really conscious of their overall safety, the condition. You heard a student talk about it today. Those are newer issues. I would say the overheating and climate control is an issue that just got elevated to the top, and restrooms is a newer one that hadn't been on our radar before. And so, okay, here's kind of just important conceptually for you all to understand, and there's going to be a point for you to reflect because some of the topics around our decision-making framework would be the topic on the December 18th facilities. There's a special meeting around just the overall facilities master plan. So this is just kind of an analysis of where we have been. Okay, I want to articulate this well, and I hope I do this. There are 2 types of investments that we have in our bond. There are those that we are doing across the system to address all of our schools. And there are places that we identify that we go deep, right? So what we're going to refer to the broad investments as targeted strategies. A really great example of that is the Living Schoolyards work that we've been doing across. The goal is to get to all of our elementary schools, right? We're doing about 5 to 6 a year to get through all 48 schools. That takes time, right? But that is a targeted approach that's broad across the entire district. Safety systems and door entry systems, those are things in our bond program that have been targeted strategies that go wide across the school district. And then there are deeper investments with those large facility projects like Roosevelt, like McClymonds, where we are investing a lot and we're addressing a lot of the different issues and needs at those school sites. So I just want to be clear around, there are 2 types. The deep investments that we're doing, and we've named those projects multiple times tonight, that is about $450 million within the bond. The broad investments across the district was about $200 million in total, which is deferred maintenance, the turf fields that are getting replaced. Those types of things are some of the broad investments. And so I just want to, in terms of Go. So we have some experience with this, but it is not a strategy, and I think that's something for the board to consider around what we're calling transformative projects. And there are very few examples of this in the district. Glenview is an example, where you looked at the old site and you moved the students off the site, you built a brand new school, right? And you're not dealing with any of the old infrastructure, so Glenview is a brand new school. We are sitting in one right here. La Escuelita, Met West, this complex was I mean, if you remember the site, there were lots of portables out there, and, you know, central office had portables all over here, converted into a brand new school. That with it, you restart the clock on all the deferred maintenance, right? Fremont is an example where most of the school has been addressed, but some has not, right? These are full transformations of schools. And in those moments, you can right-size the school, you can do different things. They are a little bit more costly, but it allows you to update all of the educational infrastructure within that school to a new standard. So that, transformative. We have, see, it's not, I don't know, it's maybe the spot over here. There we go, okay. So modernizations, you have modernizations that are happening. Oh, there we go, might be the chair. Modernization, an example of a modernization is McClymonds, right? It is a historical building, but you're trying to bring it up to the modern building code, and there's a lot of work that goes with that, and there's a lot of complexity in that. CCPA is an example of a new construction, and so you're seeing kind of projects that are there, and there's different modernizations. We're replacing the portables that are outdated portables at CCPA, and we're replacing with a new gym, but part of the building still remains as the old historic, like, Havens Court campus. So there's a question about whether you modernize or whether or not you do a full transformation of a site. The next slide goes to, these are some of the targeted investments. The examples of this is where you're repainting a school, right? And you decide that you're going to address that across the system. We are trying to replace and modernize our gyms across the schools to support athletic programming. That's an example of a targeted strategy where we've done Roosevelt, we've done Madison, we've done McClymonds. I'm missing a few other ones. Restroom upgrades, Markham, Skyline, Franklin. We're going across, doing an assessment. And these are just some of our targeted strategies, and you can see what they are right there. Turf field replacements, air quality, heat assessment and ventilation, safety improvement, living schoolyards, deferred maintenance, early childhood, energy efficiency, technology, and our cafeterias and our kitchens and dining spaces. So those are examples of targeted strategies that we have used. And so here is kind of the way that it's kind of shaping up in the bond based on what we're hearing from the feedback. And we've kind of grouped them together. And this is where, like, does this grouping make sense to you as a board, particularly for the targeted strategies? One, tier one, and this could be where you are allocating more money to some of these areas, right? Where you are looking at health, safety, and core learning environments. And this is the deferred maintenance, the health, the overall HVAC modernization, and the heat issues that you're hearing in our classrooms, both passive and active forms. The whole child experience, educational equity, long-term innovation. These are examples of TK, early childhood expansion, STEM, arts, special education spaces within classrooms, the kitchen and dining hall modernizations, because there's a lot of things that happen there, technology and infrastructure. And then tier three are things that, like, for the first time in this bond, for example, the turf fields, when we complete the McClymonds field, all the fields will be within their lifespan, right, at the high school level. Then we need to plan forward for the Skyline field, the Castlemont field, the Madison, like, so then now you have a long-term plan for it, but it's predictable because you know you've done the work to bring everything up to a standard. The same thing with living schoolyards, the same thing with solar, like, so that you might not need to invest as much because you've invested more deeply in this bond so that you're addressing that. So in terms of this framework, like for the board to have conversations about how you want to prioritize some of them and weight them in the master plan before it comes out. So with that framework, I think there's a couple of, like, if there's any clarifying questions around it, but also, like, how do you think we should be balancing those investments? How should we bring it forward to the board so that you have a clear framework in the master plan around how to manage that? And within this approach, which tiers would you consider as immediate need versus long-term targeted investments? Like, what are the things that you're hearing that would be critical for us to be considering as we go into that study session and we start talking about developing a framework, because then that framework is published and it becomes a driving force for the next bond and current reprioritization within this bond. So I'll stop there.
Sure, thank you. So board colleagues, I think what would make the most sense, because I know that there's been folks that are here for to provide public comment. So why don't we maybe provide our comment, questions, and then we have public comment, and then we do another round, and then if need be, a second round. So it could be a little bit of a conversation. I know this discussion is going to lead to some of the planning for the study session that we will have on December 18th, which is a repurposed facilities meeting. So we will not be meeting in December. It will be a full board meeting to discuss the master plan. So any comments or questions about, or answering the questions that Preston has, or things that have come up for you? Director Berry.
Yes. This question's tough for me because anywhere I've ever done, I've worked in schools or led programs. The very first thing that I did when I took over said program was address facilities. That might have looked like finally having a regular routine of cleaning the bathroom. It was paint on the walls. It's, and I did depend on philanthropy to do a lot of that work. But every time I did that, like, the results are just so clear, undeniable. Like, it changes things immediately. Kids really get excited about a place, and what we project into a space, into a physical environment, gets projected onto them, and they internalize that. So, and there's lots of research and evidence to support it. So I think, to me, it seems fundamental to do the fundamental things. Like, if there aren't clean restrooms and workable spaces, we do need to address that. The heating and cooling stuff, there are basic things that every child literally needs in order to create the conditions for success, because it doesn't matter how talented an educator is if they can't breathe in those spaces, right? And at the same time, you want to make sure that we're resourcing spaces so that it goes beyond the basic, because for the facilities that we have, the basic might still look like a prison facility. And so there's just a lot of work to do. So on one hand, I think it's important for us to establish principles. And then at the same time, I think we should also establish a process that allows us to address to have more nuanced conversations where just like mapping a principle onto our situation is going to cause us to inadvertently create harm or overlook an important community or consideration. So that's my first point, which was a very long point to make, but thank you. My second point is I'm having a hard time thinking about the prioritization of resources in a circumstance when we do have to recover so much money in our budget, both for this year and next year and for future years. And I'm a strategy person. I get on everybody's nerves. I like to work backwards, but it's really hard for me to think about investing in sites we don't know we'll still have in 5, 7, 10 years. And I don't know how we have at least an exploratory conversation that allows us to say, well, this, at some point, this property does not make sense for OUSD because it's going to cost us millions more dollars to maintain it than it is for us to shift the programming happening at this place to someplace else. And I feel like we're very afraid to have that conversation because of all of the reasons, but I don't know how we actually do thoughtful, strategic, rigorous planning without, to some extent, navigating that. Which I didn't answer the questions, but my
You
initial
did, actually.
thanks.
That
So I will
that
have
was-
a second round.
That was great.
Just
No,
in
yeah,
case.
that was fantastic. Thank you.
Director Thompson?
Yeah, kind of trying to answer the questions, but also piggybacking on what my colleague mentioned. And so just in my global conversation, this is what you'll probably get out of it. But I'm thinking about, I like your forward thinking, number one, that actually looks at those types of things that we are doing or can do, and maximize the utility of the resources that we have, number one. For example, looking at, not that this has to be it, but just as an example, looking at clean energy and then how clean energy interfaces with what we're trying to do in building a sustainable community. That's the kind of forward thinking that I'm thinking about. Now, going to the second question, actually looking at the tiers, of course, I kind of think anything that deals with student learning environment is extremely important to me, because once we get the environment correct, then of course we're able to make sure that the academic growth and the academic prowess will take place, because we could have sound learning systems for kids and we'll have a direct structure of how we are approaching the learning. So those are my two inputs necessarily at this time.
Thank you, Director Thompson.
Yeah. I think, like building upon what my colleagues have said, I think, and some of the public comments that were also made too earlier, I think part of what I've witnessed as our conversation around facilities is a lack of trust from the community, right? That we get funds, we don't use it in the way in which families can tangibly see results. And I think that if families will not choose our schools, regardless of how many families there are, if they don't actually see that we have made the investments that prioritize their student. So I think, we've done a really great job of grabbing philanthropic dollars and matching and also passing bonds and things like that. But if folks don't actively see those investments, and again, piping is really hard to see as an investment, right? Because it's behind a wall, it's all of the different things. But so I think, to me, thinking about where are places that do make the most sense to be transformative, right? Where do we see growth or potential growth and double down or want to just throw down? Where are places where we could do some modernization that would allow our students to feel more welcomed, more a part of the community, more of they could be, doing more learning and or being more whole as students. And then are there areas where, because to me, I think targeted investments, that to me is where potentially philanthropy could come in, right? I really appreciate the Warriors. I appreciate, Under Armour. I appreciate all of those folks, throwing down on the fields, the gyms, and that type of thing. I would love to see if there are, folks that could throw down on our auditoriums. There are many local thriving theaters and we have some stars amongst our alumni networks, right? And so how can we kind of be thinking a little bit more about that for kind of those enrichment partnership kind of in that third tier, because I do think, like, to what Director Berry said earlier, it's like we have to get the fundamentals right first, and then some of the other things. So making sure that, like, we have clean and safe bathrooms, there are, like, clear entry systems, and I think over the last few weeks, that point has been made extra clear, that those investments were really important, even though they were, like, district-wide investments. And I think, again, like, to some of the school sites that we know, like, the capacity is there, it makes sense to throw down to even build more capacity, either for TK or because, again, the neighborhood, the geography, where can we make some of those, like, whole child experience investments? And now I'm just repeating myself, but, like, lastly, that, how can we then use other dollars for some of the kind of, I would think of it as, like, kind of a little bit of extra things. I know that that's not potentially how other families and students would think about them, but yeah, I'm just gonna keep repeating myself because we are at a late hour. Yeah, and then we're gonna go to public comment.
Yeah, and just to be clear, this conversation about facility, like the future use of facilities, is not necessarily a conversation where it's like, this school has under 200 students, we should probably close it within the next 3 years. It's more like, where is this building? What is the relationships, the community's relationship to this site? Does it attract traffic? Do people depend on it? Does it feel safe? Because all of those questions are important too, to determining whether the district wants to continue using it for something, for anything. If a site only has 200 students, like, what else could we be doing in that community or at that site? So I just wanted to be clear about that, and because I think that also could help inform the kinds of investments we should be making at each property. Like, that's the extent to which that site is going to serve the community. Which also brings me to the last thing I'll say, because I know we got to get to public comment and I got to get home. I do think that this has to be a city conversation too, because the city is impacted by what does or does not happen in our schools, and we share sort of like all of the experiences in our environment, good and bad, and they do city planning at the city level, and I feel like that's important for us to do, and obviously we don't need to spend resources doing that if they're already doing it.
Yeah, but to that note, I just want to make sure that it's like a partnership, because there have been, I think that's part of the trust that has been broken in our community of, like, when we've closed the site, what's the plan for that site, right? Like, what are we actually doing? Then there's, like, a city and district back and forth about unhoused folks and Blythe and fires and, all these other issues. And no longer are we doing this, but there's been times where fingers pointing, right? Versus, like, let's work together to solve a problem. But I do want to come to the table as an equal partner, and not just, what do you all want to do with our properties? Because that's not the, yes.
That's why you invite them into the conversation now.
Yeah. So public comment on this item, Mr. Hollis?
Yes, we have 2 public commenters. They are Megan Parker and Allison Mata.
Great. We got
none signed up.
Yeah. Great. So we got 2 minutes. Yes. Because the microphone is up there for our Zoom recording.
All right, so I'm Megan Parker. I have a daughter at Manzanita Seed, first grade, and you guys hit on a whole bunch of topics tonight that I wasn't going to touch on, but first and foremost, I was here last time to talk about the heat mitigation issues. And just an update since that, several of the schools, a couple of us mamas, built a Cool the Schools website that I highly recommend that you check out. It has a whole bunch of data, it has forms, it's how we're talking to all the schools within the district is what we're trying to do. Secondly, there is the Extreme Heat and Community Grant that was brought up last time, and we never got any feedback on that, or at least I didn't. We would really like for Manzanita Seed to participate in that, especially since we were a part of the 2020 report. Let's see here, December 18th, that is the master plan that's coming up. We're planning on quite a few people coming to that, just to FYI for you guys. And then kind of our question is, how will the heat mitigation projects be included into a summer plan of 2026, hopefully in the master plan? There was a meeting last night at Sequoia that occurred, and we heard that based on the steps that they've taken at their school, that quite a few of those things could be done at our schools just to cool it down. I was looking at this broad investment across district, like your smaller projects. That's where, I mean, there's parents and stuff that are willing to step up and do some of these window clings and things like that. Let's have a conversation about it so it's not just on you all and the district to get it done. You guys talked about fire tonight. We can't have a classroom if there's a fire going on around us and the kids can't breathe in it, right? Like the water, if we don't have drinkable water and it's hot in the classroom, like those are all things, it's all full circle for us. And I'll leave it at that and let Allison take over. Thank you for your time.
Hi, my name is Allison Mata. I am a parent of a third grader at Manzanita Seed. My background is also in commercial construction and property management. So listening to all of this, I think a lot about it. And one of the things that has come up, and we talk about saving funds. We talk about like making sure that we're using our funds wisely. Our what's it called? The land, what's it called, Megan? The nature space did not pass inspection for the ADA inspection. How does that happen? Now, our school, that location has been out of commission for the students for months. When things don't pass inspection, ADA inspection, how is that possible? How is that accessibility not passed? Why? Why have the kids not been able to use the space? And we know when things don't pass, then it costs more money to fix them. How are we using our funds wisely? That's that. All right, sorry, let me go back. To talk about what Megan said about the Cool the Schools, I'm just gonna read briefly from that. So we really believe that OUSD needs to take action today. All students in OUSD should have access to cool classrooms, not only students at schools that can raise the funds through their parent-teacher organizations. Measure Y bonds raised, as we know, $735 million, including $8 million allocated to heat abatement. So we want to make sure that OUSD immediately allocates those funds to improve the building envelopes of schools to physically cool buildings by funding approximately $3,000 per classroom at identified schools before the 2026-2027 school year to install tested and proven easy improvements such as UV reflecting window clings, adequate blinds, shades, and ceiling fans. So we know that there's 2,100 classrooms in OUSD without centralized district provided forced air. That would, to do all of those classrooms, it'd be $6.3 million, which is within that $8 million. The next thing, creating and implementing policy, guidance, and training on how current windows and fans should be operated to enable night flush of hot air out of the buildings per OUSD's thermal comfort research at all schools district-wide. Taking additional action such as adding external shades to classrooms, specifically southwest and west facing, and shading classroom windows through adding trees with needed insulation or green space outside of the windows by the 27-28 school year. And then lastly, OUSD should continue to design and fund more advanced cooling solutions as temperatures rise. OUSD can and must follow its own research and act now to improve its building before these HVAC systems are in place. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And yeah, it's all good. And I appreciate the comments that we've also gotten online, because the link is on one of those comments, board colleagues. It's, I think, on the first one from Rachel. So I appreciate you all putting that information together in one place, because it could be difficult to find sometimes with all of the documents that we take a look at. So a couple things that came up. One was around, being able to absorb contributions from either PTSAs, individuals, philanthropy, as a district. I know we do have like that green revolving fund that has about $80,000 in it from some of the savings that we've done. Is there a way for us to be able to use that fund as a way to capture some of the contributions that folks want to make, and then figure out how we would want to prioritize some of the solutions that folks have talked about?
I think a couple of parts about this, and really appreciate the conversation and the dialogue around all of this. I want to kind of walk through a couple of different, we're always looking for philanthropy and other resources and grants. The whole project at the Manzanita campus in MLK came through the CAL FIRE, where the district actually won a competitive grant and actually used the research study that we had done to document why we needed to be selected as a school site, and that was based off the research that was done in some of the planning that we've done. So us having a robust planning side, with Ms. Ramsey leads, is really helpful in going after the philanthropy and the different grants. I will definitely follow up on the issues around, because I know it passed DSA, and I don't know which specific playground inspection piece might have been triggered. So I'll look into that, and I can get back to you on it, because it is wrapping up. The project is still closing out right now at the Manzanita campus, and so I do want to name that some of these strategies, and this is where these conversations are really helpful. There was a lot of pushback on solar for a period of time that you heard at the facilities committee, right? And you're seeing that, and even historically, I'd want to name.
Are you talking about CBOC?
CBOC, but also in public around the whether or not we should invest in solar, right, as a strategy. This is where board policy is just really critical, because prior, if you go back, this building is built without air conditioning. It's all passive systems, and the night flush, when you've had a couple of those cold nights, is when that system has broken down and you feel the full power of night flush happening at the site. So there was a stance previously in the district around not using air conditioning at all and not being able to regulate classrooms. That is clearly a direction that we are shifting with the heat pumps that are happening at MLA, McClymonds, Garfield, and there are some trade-offs. And I would just say, your staff, hearing these comments, we're trying to put together all those variables. A really great example of that is in the MLA project. We know that the heat pumps are going to drive more electricity use at that site, flat out, right? Which impacts your general fund, right? So when we had the architect design the school and we got the first drawings for that site, they had to try to minimize cost, had limited the size of the solar array that was on the roof. And we asked them, on every future project, we want you to maximize the solar on the roof so that we know we're offsetting those costs. And you saw last night that investment in solar is actually reducing the impact on the general fund in that utility bucket by almost $1 million. So these types of conversations are really critical. The living schoolyards and what we're doing is the first round of some of the heat mitigation. And there are definitely some slides that we could share where we went out with the drone and at actually your site at Manzanita Seed on that upper playground and saw the temperatures that were 140, 145 degrees on a hot day. And so all of these things impact the overall temperature on the site. So we're always looking for other opportunities to expand that. And I think it is just the timing of the funding, in particularly in the public comment, it's a perfect time for us to be engaging in this conversation to set up things for 2026, right? Because the next bond sale is happening in January, and that will release that next amount of funding around the 8 million that we need. And, you know, we are like, I mean, this is one of the beautiful things about working in Oakland. There's so many brilliant people throughout the system. I think the biggest challenge for us, and I just want to name this, is the equity side of that variable around targeted strategies. Who gets it first? Why those schools versus others? Do we invest? And this is where we really, the Cal Shape program is another grant that there will be sensors, and, you know, Jaquan is working on the overall, that array. We'll be able to identify for the first time in Oakland where the hottest classrooms are, right? And then we do invest those targeted strategies there first. And I, by the way, I did look at the school, the website that they've created. And it's a really great resource to kind of like go and start having this public discourse around this. So that's a lot, but I don't know, did I actually hit on
Yeah,
all the
no, I
parts of
think
your-
it didn't touch upon what I was saying, but I think it does like touch upon like it holistically in a way.
It was
of,
fun.
like, the
I got the
funding.
funding part. What was the part before?
So I guess I want to capture what the speaker was mentioning of like there are families and parents and community members that want to invest outside of the bond, outside of a parcel. Is there a way for us to capture those dollars, whether they be $5, whether it be $500,000 that somebody may want to donate ourselves, and then potentially have similar to the bond a prioritization of like we will focus on this and just kind of check off campuses as we get those funds.
Thank you. I know, like, and that is a part where we've been looking into like partnering with PTAs in some schools that might be able to raise some of the resources to do some of the things that we're talking about here. And I think it's like kind of the beginning of us being able to look at ways to bring in money like that to the district. Historically, when we came in, but I'm saying that there are PTAs that I know are raising funds for their own site, for their own site. Right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
So,
that's what I'm trying to
but
figure out, yeah.
in terms of if you're thinking about like strategies to look at the issue district-wide, there may be some school communities that are willing to invest, and there are some, to address some of the very same strategies that you're talking about at their own school site. So the district doesn't have to fund that, where we could focus our resources in other areas. You do have the bond funding that is ongoing, and it's like, how do you braid together the funding stack to be able to address the issues district-wide? If you're talking about cool air-conditioned rooms throughout the district, there are two big barriers for that. One is just the overall electrical infrastructure that is probably the most outdated infrastructure at our school sites. And then the second part is actually, where do you invest first? Because you're not going to be able to do, we can do the 6 million, that's within our reach. What's beyond that is going to be really difficult for the district to get to. And if there's a way to set up, funding strategies for, community members to fund that level of work, we can do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's part of the conversation. So we'll continue to have that. Board colleagues, any other comments or questions?
I just want to make sure one point isn't lost, which is you alluded to it at the very end, which is that 6.3 million seems feasible, and I think that's the point. The point is there are some immediate things that folks have a lot of energy and expertise to implement, and we want to make sure we prioritize that in the immediate future, because we understand that some of the longer term things, require more planning, fundraising, development, or integration into like the broader spending plan. Is that?
Yeah. 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 So what the speaker was saying, that there are things that are also not going to be taking up more electricity that will negatively impact our base base budget. Yes, and I'm just going to end it there. I had another point that I was going to make, but I forgot Alrighty, any other comments that folks want to make? And then, yeah.
So last year when we were having the closures and mergers conversations, there was a company that came in and we met some school that did all the explorations of the different sites. Do we have that data somewhere? Okay.
Around what?
Facilities, yeah, they were, because they had mapped out all the schools, the class sizes, what impact they had, those types of things. And I was just curious because they'd gotten all of our emails and never sent data out to us.
Yeah, like I think so. Yes, there was an organization or company. I actually don't know who did that. I actually think OUSD did this study. Staff did that.
Was
Correct?
it?
I don't know.
There's a difference between folks who facilitated conversations during that experience and the folks who supercharged the data behind some of the.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I can say that during the pandemic, the research, the RAD department within OUSD did site walks to map out. So we now have a database, it's called a rooms dashboard that shows the size and capacity of each of our sites. That was internally done. Is that
Yeah,
what you think
because
you
you
might be
just mentioned
referencing?
you're a strategy person. I am too. Like, where do we start? And when we're talking about heat mitigation and those types of things, that is going to be a part of this plan. So that's why I was wondering if that data. So that's exactly yeah.
Maybe I can say where there's a layering of data sets that is actually going to really create like a profound, like strategic lens for us to look at. One, we did the first ground of doing that ground walk at all the sites. We have since had the facilities master plan that went and reviewed all the systems and went through every single one of our sites. That is part of the facilities master plan where you're doing capacity and system analysis. We also had it's an audit, the investment grade audit around what might be some funding sources around some of the energy investments that also walked the sites, which is more looking for what are the energy ways you can reduce the energy load. Once we have those three layers, plus the CalShape data around what the temperatures are in classrooms, it gives us a very strategic lens by which schools to address. And we haven't been waiting to do some of the actions around the living schoolyards work, which does actually impact the heat island effects at school sites. So those are kind of the data sets that we'll be making available in this. Yeah, go ahead.
No, and just to add, I know this is something you mentioned in your notes as well, is educational adequacy. Just what does the educational from an educational programmatic perspective, how are these facilities supporting those programs? So that's another layer that's added. Like when you walk in, what do you feel? Like is the facility supporting the program that it's meant to support?
So now I remember what I was going to say.
Go for it.
Thank you all for filibustering me for that. So to make sure that I got my point across. Yeah, so I think part of this is also around timing, right? So we're coming back in January to like reprioritize the Measure Y dollars. And so I think with the information that we have on this website, with the public comments that we'll be getting throughout, it sounds like, which is great. We can then incorporate some of that into the thinking about the reprioritization, so we can see if we can absorb that $6 million into the Measure Y dollars. Yeah, as we continue to, navigate how do we get other donations and partners to support the work of our schools.
Just one point, like in terms of the workflow, I just want to name, and actually we had a community engagement at Sequoia. We have assigned a PM, knowing that the funding is coming up. Jaquan Cornish is the OUSD project manager that will be leading this work. So we already do. He's currently working on
which work?
The work around heat mitigation and like that work. Like so, when one of the things that we don't talk about a lot is like stacking the work of individuals. He is currently working on the Fremont project and has actually been really passionate about this issue, has been in a fellowship to kind of prepare himself, knowing that we were going to be moving forward into doing heat mitigation in this round of the bond. So like we are staffed up and have been like planning on doing this work. And so it really is identifying what those strategies are. So there is some timing and some synergy around the request and how we're planning on using the $8 million that'll be allocated in that next round.
That's great. And again, I love the staff capacity that is being built as well. All right. We are done with public comment on this item. This is not a voting item as of now. We've already done G. Now we're at H, which is public comment on non-agenda items. Is there anybody for public comment on this item, Mr. Hollis?
There are no public commenters signed up for this item.
All right. We're still not done. Introduction of new legislative matters. Colleagues, is there any new legislative matter?
I'm just kidding.
Okay. Director Thompson?
No.
All right. With that, we
If
adjourn.
I
Where's my
may,
gavel?
If I may,
Oh,
Chair,
public
there are
comment.
no public commenters for introduction of new legislative matters, and I forgot to bring the gavel in here, so.
It's all good. Thank you, Corey. All right. With that, we will adjourn tonight's meeting. Thank you, everybody.